Chapter 273. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are available here. Zhuang Yueshi noticed that Empress Dowager Zhuang suddenly became cold. She thought that the girl was really dead. The Empress Dowager was really angry. Even the emperor could not save her today. However, what Zhuang Yueshi did not expect was that Empress Dowager Zhuang did not get angry. Empress Dowager Zhuang stared at Gu Jiao's outstretched hand. After a while, her eyes became colder and colder. "But why don't you get angry?" Empress Dowager Zhuang closed her eyes and took a deep breath to suppress her anger. Zhuang Yueshi was excited. It was coming. Who allowed you to come in? Empress Dowager Zhuang shouted. Yes, who allowed you to come in? Zhuang Yueshi was proud, but she soon noticed that something was wrong. Why were Eunuch Qin and the others all looking at her? Her heart skipped a beat for no reason. She looked at Empress Dowager Zhuang and realized in hindsight that those words seemed to be directed at her. Empress Dowager. Was she blaming her for trespassing? Why? Wasn't the girl the one who trespassed first? She even climbed onto Empress Dowager's phoenix bed. That girl was still on the bed and hadn't come down yet. Empress Dowager did not punish her, but scolded her own grandniece? What kind of logic was this? Before Zhuang Yueshi could figure out, Empress Dowager Zhuang spoke again. Her voice was dignified and cold as usual. Who is guarding the bedroom today? Eunuch Qin quickly said, Empress Dowager, it's Xiao Li and Xiao Da. Empress Dowager Zhuang did not even lift her eyelids and said mercilessly, flog them 20 times and kick them out of Rinshou Palace. I don't want to see them again. Zhuang Yueshi's body trembled. It was she who asked Eunuch Li and Eunuch Da to let her in. She also promised them that if anything happened, she would take responsibility. But in the end, she got them into trouble. Empress Dowager Zhuang might not know that she asked them to do this, but Empress Dowager Zhuang still did it. This was killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Empress Dowager, please, outside the bedchamber. Before the two of them could utter a complete sentence, they were gagged by Eunuch Qin and dragged away to be executed. This was the imperial palace. There was no room for any mistakes. The Empress Dowager had done the same in the past. Everyone only saw her glorious side, but they didn't know how hard it was for her to take every step of the bloody road. Was the Empress Dowager born so decisive and fierce? It was only because she had suffered too many losses and many people had died that she stepped on the bones and ascended to the Empress Dowager's phoenix throne. Did Eunuch Qin sympathize with them? No sympathy. Today, they only listened to Zhuang Yueshi's words. If they were to listen to their opponent's bewitchment one day, who would be the one to die? Outside, there was the sound of beating. With every beat, Zhuang Yueshi's face turned paler. In the end, when Eunuch Qin returned to report, Zhuang Yueshi's face was completely pale. She looked at herself kneeling by the Empress Dowager's feet, and then looked at Gu Jiao sitting comfortably on the Empress Dowager's phoenix bed. For a moment, she didn't understand what had gone wrong. She was the daughter of the Awang family. That girl was just the mud in the dust. Empress Dowager Zhuang spoke in a deep voice. Why are you standing here? Do you still need me to teach you what to do? You trespassed into my bedchamber and broke my phoenix seal. What? Are you still waiting for me to reward you? You should be glad that your surname is Zhuang. Otherwise, even if you had 10 heads, it wouldn't be enough for me to chop them off. Empress Dowager. Zhuang Yueshi was so scared that she knelt on the ground. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked away and said indifferently, Go back to the Zhuang family. Reflect on your mistakes behind closed doors. Zhuang Yueshi felt wronged. Isn't the phoenix seal? Empress Dowager Zhuang interrupted her coldly. It's you who are dead. These words were too hurtful. In front of the palace servants and Gu Jiao, Zhuang Yueshi felt like she was slapped in the face. The punishment of closing the door was not terrible. What was terrible was losing face in front of the people who looked down on her. Gu Jiao's slap only landed on Zhuang Yueshi's face. The Empress Dowager's slap landed on Zhuang Yuexi's self-esteem. Zhuang Yuexi felt wronged to the extreme. Tears began to roll in her eyes. Yes, Yuexi will leave now. Empress Dowager, please take care of your body. Yuexi will visit you another day. Empress Dowager Zhuang said lightly, don't come without my summons. Zhuang Yuexi thought, I was just being polite. Is it necessary to be so ruthless? Zhuang Yuexi left the palace awkwardly. The Zhuang sisters entered the palace a few days earlier to serve the Empress Dowager. Because the Empress Dowager only favored Zhuang Yuexi, Zhuang Mengdai felt bored. She packed up and went home early, which saved her from embarrassment. Eunuch Qin brought the cleaning maids in and cleaned up the mess on the ground. A lamp was lit in the bedchamber. Maybe it was because there was a little girl on the phoenix bed. Although it was out of place, it unexpectedly made people feel that there was a trace of vitality in the cold and strict palace. Gu Jiao sat on the bed and played with her fingers. She did not know whether she should get down or not. Empress Dowager Zhuang sat on the bed and stared at the back of her red hand. She did not speak. Eunuch Qin walked over with sharp eyes and said to Gu Jiao with a smile, Miss, your hand is injured. I have some medicine for wounds here. Apply some for you. Gu Jiao looked at her hand strangely. Where is it injured? I don't have it. Empress Dowager Zhuang's eyes were cold. Gu Jiao looked at her and then at Eunuch Qin. Eunuch Qin winked at her. Gu Jiao said, Oh. She stretched out her little hand. Okay. Eunuch Qin made a gesture of wanting to apply medicine for Gu Jiao, but he suddenly seemed to think of something. He patted his head and said, Look at this servant. I just finished cleaning. My hands are not clean. I will have to trouble the Empress Dowager to apply medicine for the miss. Look, this was what it meant to be a smart person. Eunuch Qin did not seem to be embarrassed at all. He had spoken harshly to Gu Jiao. His face was not worth anything to him. Eunuch Qin gave the medicine to Empress Dowager Zhuang and then left with the palace people. The Empress Dowager also knew how to care for people. Why didn't she know before? But it seemed that the Empress Dowager did not want her unknown side to be known. Only Gu Jiao and Empress Dowager Zhuang were left in the room. Gu Jiao thought for a moment and handed her hand to Empress Dowager Zhuang. Quickly apply the medicine. It would be better if she did not apply it. Empress Dowager Zhuang. The back of Gu Jiao's hand was really fine. After Empress Dowager Zhuang applied some cooling ointment, she said to her, Turn around. Huh? Gu Jiao was slightly stunned. Empress Dowager Zhuang said in a deep voice, I just said turn around. Oh. Gu Jiao obediently turned around. Empress Dowager Zhuang gently lifted her nightgown. Gu Jiao's little body stiffened. She was about to turn around when she heard Empress Dowager Zhuang say, Don't move. Gu Jiao did not move. Gu Jiao's back was covered with scars. The swelling had disappeared, but there were still large patches of blue and purple. The scars had formed a thick scab, and the skin around the scab was slightly red. If she did not scratch it, it would itch. If she scratched it, it would hurt. Gu Jiao usually endured it. She did not say a word about how the scars came about. She also acted as if nothing had happened in front of Empress Dowager Zhuang. Empress Dowager Zhuang thought about how she would cook and hang upside down on the roof. She would laugh in front of her without a care in the world. Her heart inexplicably felt suffocated. She dipped her fingertips in medicine and gently applied it to her scars. Aya. Gu Jiao's body trembled and she unconsciously dodged to the side. Does it hurt? Empress Dowager Zhuang asked nervously. It itches. Gu Jiao said. The scabs were the most itchy when they fell off. Empress Dowager Zhuang could not help her with this. She could only apply more ointment to cool her down. Gu Jiao sat cross-legged on the phoenix bed, letting her grand aunt apply the ointment. Suddenly, she thought of something and asked, Great aunt, have you remembered something? Empress Dowager Zhuang's hand paused, and she said seriously, No. Oh. Gu Jiao was disappointed. After applying the ointment, Empress Dowager Zhuang had someone bring in the food. Gu Jiao was indeed hungry. She rarely took an afternoon nap, but unexpectedly, she slept until night. She looked at the exquisite and delicious dishes on the table. There was a plate of meat with sesame scattered on it. She and her grandaunt were the same when it came to loving sesame. This was clearly the meat that Xiao Luleng took from his fellow students at the Imperial College. The taste was the same. Grandaunt, you really don't remember? Gu Jiao ate the meat and looked at Empress Dowager Zhuang with some suspicion. This was clearly her favorite food. Empress Dowager Zhuang likely said, "Eat your food, why are you talking so much?" Gu Jiao continued to eat. The dishes in the palace were very sumptuous. Gu Jiao even ate crab. The crab meat and crab paste were all removed and then put back into the crab shell. The organs that should be removed were all removed. With a chopstick, it was full of crab paste and crab meat. "Grandaunt, why aren't you eating?" Gu Jiao asked. "I Jia has already eaten." Empress Dowager Zhuang said. She had indeed eaten, and it was Xiao Liulong's dark cuisine. Empress Dowager Zhuang was really disgusting. She didn't want to eat for the next 3 days. Gu Jiao thought about it and took out a small paper bag from her purse. After opening it, there were 3 candied fruits. "Grandaunt, do you eat this?" "Eat a little after a meal. You won't get indigestion." Empress Dowager Zhuang cleared her throat and took it with a look of disgust. She didn't want Gu Jiao to see her saliva. It was the taste in her memory. It was sweet and sour with a faint plum fragrance. It was different from the candied fruits in the palace. It wasn't a sweet, but it was unexpectedly delicious. After eating the 3 candied fruits, Empress Dowager Zhuang still wanted more. Gu Jiao blinked and asked, "Is it a familiar taste?" Empress Dowager Zhuang said seriously, "There are only 3. How can you tell?" "That's true." Gu Jiao hesitated and took out a small paper bag from her purse. There were still 3 candied fruits inside. Empress Dowager Zhuang silently looked at the candied fruits, and then looked at Gu Jiao's purse. That purse was personally embroidered by Empress Dowager Zhuang. It was Gu Jiao's 15th birthday present. It was embroidered with 2 quails and a few quail eggs. In fact, she wanted to embroider mandarin ducks. However, the embroidery was not satisfactory and ended up with quails. How did she give away such a stupid thing? Empress Dowager Zhuang disliked it very much. Sure enough, when a person's brain was damaged, they would do stupid things. This was the dark history of Empress Dowager Zhuang's life. Empress Dowager Zhuang also finished the 3 candied fruits. When she was still an old lady, Gu Jiao only allowed Empress Dowager Zhuang to eat 3 candied fruits a day. She was only allowed to eat 5 during the new year. If she wanted to eat more, she had to find a way to hide it. However, she couldn't hide too much because little Jing Kong loved to investigate her. If he found out, he would complain. Empress Dowager Zhuang was still not satisfied after eating 6 candied fruits. She snorted and said, "What familiar? I didn't taste anything. Try a few more." Gu Jiao looked at her suspiciously and said, "Great aunt, you didn't do it on purpose just to get a few candied fruits, did you?" Empress Dowager Zhuang choked and said, How is that possible?" In the end, Empress Dowager Zhuang did not manage to eat the 7th candied fruit. Not only that, but before Gu Jiao left, she instructed eunuch Qin not to allow Empress Dowager Zhuang to eat sweets. She could not eat fruits with high sugar content. She had to abstain from certain foods. Eunuch Qin agreed with a smile. Empress Dowager Zhuang's face turned black. After Zhuang Yueshi returned to the Zhuang family crying, Grand Tutor Zhuang asked her what happened. Did something happen to the Empress Dowager? Why did she cry like this? When the Empress Dowager was sent to the palace to recuperate, Zhuang Yueshi didn't shed a single tear. Zhuang Yueshi felt wronged and said, the Empress Dowager drove me out of the palace. Grand Tutor Zhuang was puzzled and asked, why? Zhuang Yueshi told him about how she caught Gu Jiao climbing onto the phoenix bed and how she was slapped by Gu Jiao and broke the seal. She was the one in the wrong. She was the one who hit me, so I bumped into her. But the Empress Dowager blamed me. Grand Tutor Zhuang frowned and asked, doesn't the Empress Dowager love you? How could it be? How could Zhuang Yueshi say that the Empress Dowager didn't love her, but that girl? But it was strange. The Empress Dowager was not so obvious during the day. At night, the Empress Dowager seemed to be a different person. Something must have happened. She told him her doubts. Grand Tutor Zhuang was silent for a long time and said, "I know. You go back to your room first. I will go to the palace to see the Empress Dowager tomorrow." Yes. Zhuang Yueshi agreed and went back to her room with red eyes. The next day, after the morning court, Grand Tutor Zhuang followed Empress Dowager Zhuang and said, "Empress Dowager." Empress Dowager Zhuang raised her hand. The palace maid who was kneeling beside her understood and said softly, "Stop." The phoenix carriage stopped near the throne room. Grand Tutor Zhuang bowed and said, "Empress Dowager, can we talk in private?" Empress Dowager Zhuang flicked her wide sleeves and said, "Speak. There is no one here who cannot listen." Yes. Grand Tutor Zhuang looked at the expressionless palace servants and eunuch Qin. He stepped forward and approached the high and mighty Feng Ai and said, "Sure caused trouble in the palace. I have already taught her a lesson when she came back." Empress Dowager, please calm down. Speak human language. Empress Dowager Zhuang said lightly. Empress Dowager Zhuang did not like to beat around the bush with people unless it was necessary. But it was clear that there was no need to do so with her own brother. Grand Tutor Zhuang sighed and said, "I have asked she about yesterday's matter. She was indeed wrong and should not have barged into the Empress Dowager's bedroom. However, she is the Empress Dowager's niece. Empress Dowager punishing her in front of so many servants and a commoner girl. Isn't this not giving her a way out?" Empress Dowager Zhuang said, "She is not a commoner girl. She is the daughter of Marquis Ding and Fu and the wife of the new top scorer." Grand Tutor Zhuang. Is this the main point? Empress Dowager Zhuang continued. Also, she dared to fake Aijia's imperial edict. How can Aijia give her a way out? Grand Tutor Zhuang did not know about the fake imperial edict. If it was real, then it was not a small matter. This was the same as faking the emperor's imperial edict. It was an unforgivable crime. Empress Dowager Zhuang. She dared to tell Jiao Jiao that Aijia did not want Jiao Jiao. Why doesn't she go to heaven? Grand Tutor Zhuang had originally come to denounce Zhuang Yueshi, but he ended up being checkmated instead. It was extremely awkward. Naturally, he blamed Zhuang Yueshi for not telling him the truth, but he was also very curious about the girl's ending. Grand Tutor Zhuang looked at the Empress Dowager in the Phoenix sedan and said, "May I ask how the Empress Dowager dealt with that girl?" He did not care about the wife of the top scorer. He did not care about the daughter of the Marquis Fu. The main point was that she climbed onto the Phoenix bed and smashed the Phoenix seal. She deserved to die. Does Aijia need to tell you what she does? Empress Dowager Zhuang shot him a cold gaze. Grand Tutor Zhuang instantly did not dare to speak. He squeezed his fingers and said, "Then this official will leave first." Wait. Empress Dowager Zhuang stopped him. "You came at the right time. Aijia remembered something. Aijia recently gave your granddaughter a lot of things. Return them all to Aijia." Grand Tutor Zhuang staggered and almost fell. Did he hear wrongly? She actually wanted them to return the things that the Empress Dowager gave out? You are the Empress Dowager of a country. Can you do this? The original Empress Dowager Zhuang naturally would not do such a disgraceful thing. But she was now the Empress Dowager Zhuang, who had lived a hard life. Her Jiao Jiao had even gone to the market to buy mountain goods to support her family. What was her status? Could it be eaten? She earned money with her own ability. Why should she give it to someone she should not give it to? She wanted it back. So what? Grand Tutor Zhuang almost spat out blood. So why did he come to find her? If he did not look for her, she would not have remembered. Grand Tutor Zhuang returned to the mansion. Zhuang Yueshi was full of joy as she waited for her grandfather to seek justice for her. She did not expect her grandfather to hesitate. "Grandfather, what happened? What did the Empress Dowager say?" she asked. Grand Tutor Zhuang coughed lightly and said, The Empress Dowager wants you to return the things she gave you. Zhuang Yuexi's face turned pale. What? Grand Tutor Zhuang also felt that he was wronged. He said embarrassedly, "Didn't you say that you don't like it?" When did she say that she did not like it? She only said that it was different from her previous preferences. Furthermore, it was one thing to not like it. It was another thing for the Empress Dowager to take it back. Zhuang Yuexi thought of something and said in shock, Then what about the princess mansion in the south of the city? The Empress Dowager will not take it back, will she?" Eunuch Qin, who was ordered by the Empress Dowager to take the things, heard this at the door. He turned to the eunuch accompanying him and said, "Go back and ask the Empress Dowager if she wants to take back the new mansion." Zhuang Yuexi. Why did she have to say that? Digression, in the middle of the night, I climbed up to look at the monthly ticket. It was 7,878. Did you do it on purpose? Do you dare to make it 7,888? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that cannot be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/8964-_8964-282623889. HTML Genius. Remember the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 274. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found on the internet are available here. The news that Zhuang Yuexi was humiliated by the Empress Dowager was not spread out so quickly. However, the Empress Dowager's phoenix seal was broken. The phoenix on it fell, and Eunuch Qin took it to the imperial palace to fix it. In addition, Zhuang Yuexi moved out of the palace at this time. Everyone guessed that she might have broken the phoenix seal. However, it was not easy to find out about the Rinshou Palace. The Zhuang family also kept quiet about it. Therefore, there was no confirmation. Xiao Lulang knew nothing about the palace. He left the palace, and his expression was not good. It was not because he was ostracized by his colleagues, nor was it because the chancellor secretly made things difficult for him. It was because he saw Lu Quan waiting by the roadside when he left the Hanlin Academy. What's wrong? He remembered that he told Lu Quan that he would walk back on his own without picking him up. Lu Quan said awkwardly, "It's Jing Kong." Something happened. To be exact, the little guy's parents were called again. Xiao Lulang had a toothache. How many times had this happened this semester? It had only been a few months since the incident of a big bird eating a small bird. Why was he in trouble again so soon? Xiao Lulang took a deep breath and said slowly, which classmate was bullied by him again? He was clearly the youngest in the elementary school, but every time, he could bully those who were a few years older until they cried. It was not entirely true that he did it on purpose. In short, this little thing had a kind of invisible talent to make people cry. Lu Quan said embarrassedly, "No, not a classmate. It's a teacher, Teacher Sunday." Xiao Liulang's eyebrows twitched. The little guy bullied a teacher? Was he trying to betray his teacher? Xiao Lulang also understood why Lu Quan came to the Hanlin Academy. This was indeed a serious matter. Lu Quan could not explain the specific situation. Xiao Lulang went directly to the Meng School and met the governor in charge of the school. His surname was Ouyang. Xiao Lulang was this year's top scorer, and he had studied at the directorate's easygoing hall. Ouyang Shiwejing had long heard of him, so he greeted him politely. Xiao Lulang put down his walking stick and cupped his hands. "What is it this time?" Ouyang Shiwejing wanted to say something, but hesitated. After a long while he said helplessly, "You go take a look for yourself." Xiao Lulang was led by Ouyang Shiwejing to Teacher Sun's office. This was the place where Teacher Sun dealt with school affairs. It was not far from the classroom of the prodigy class. After passing through a corridor and turning a corner, they arrived. Before Xiao Lulang arrived, he heard the shouts inside. At first, he was stunned, but then he realized that it was Teacher Sun who was shouting. Xiao Liulang's temples twitched again. What on earth did his brat do to be able to agitate Teacher Sun to this extent? Little Jing Kong is in the classroom. Let me take you to see Teacher Sun first. Ouyang Shuezhing said awkwardly and raised his hand to knock on the unlocked door. The shouts in the room stopped abruptly. After a while, the door was opened. The person who opened the door was the former teacher of Little Jing Kong, Teacher Jiang. After Teacher Jiang was transferred to the 6th hall of the directorate to teach, he almost never came to the elementary school. Just now, he was comforting Teacher Sunday, obviously. The effect of the comforting was not satisfactory. Teacher Sun could vent his emotions in front of his old friends, but he could not lose his self-control in front of Ouyang Shuezhing and the students' parents. He tidied up and came out from behind the screen with eyes swollen like walnuts. Teacher Jiang knew Xiao Lulang. When Little Jing Kong first got into trouble, Teacher Jiang was there. At that time, he tried his best to protect Little Jing Kong and did not hesitate to offend Qin Chu, who was a prince. This made Xiao Lulang have a good impression of him. Xiao Lulang saluted him with one hand in the other. Teacher Jiang. Teacher Jiang politely returned the salute. He did not beat around the bush with Xiao Lulang and directly told him what happened. It turned out that today's lesson was arithmetic. Teacher Sun explained a problem and expanded it to the ancestral ratio. Little Jing Kong said that Teacher Sun was wrong and said it in front of all the students. In fact, he was not wrong, Teacher Jiang said. The ancestral ratio was 22:7, and the secret law was 355/113. It was accurate to the last 7 digits of the derivative. This was recorded in the 10 Sutras of Arithmetical Classics. Xiao Lulang had also been studying the 10 Sutras of Arithmetical Classics recently, so he knew that the ancestral ratio was indeed this number. Why did he say that Teacher Sun was wrong? Did Teacher Sun show him the 10 Sutras of Arithmetical Classics? Little Jing Kong was a strict child. As long as he found the source, he would not pester endlessly. That was the problem. Teacher Sun took out the 10 Sutras of Arithmetical Classics and showed it to him, but he said that it was not accurate enough. He said a long string of numbers in one breath, at least 17 or 18 digits of the derivative. He directly stunned Teacher Sunday. Teacher Sun thought that he was disrupting the class. Little Jing Kong said that Teacher Sun was misleading the students. In order to prove his point, he dug a hole for Teacher Sun and threw 10 arithmetic problems at him in one breath. In the end, Teacher Sun could not solve a single problem. If he could not solve it, it meant that Teacher Sun's knowledge was not good enough. If his knowledge was not good enough, it meant that there was also a problem with the ancestral ratio that Teacher Sun taught. Teacher Sun was misleading the students. This was Little Jing Kong's logic. In fact, one could not generalize like this. Teacher Sun could not solve those problems because those problems were beyond Teacher Sun's knowledge. One could not say that the points within Teacher Sun's knowledge were also wrong. However, Little Jing Kong was the king of the children in the class. Everyone in the class responded to his call. Little Jing Kong gave 10 questions, but Teacher Sun could not solve a single one. After that, Teacher Sun gave Little Jing Kong another 10 questions, and Little Jing Kong solved at least 5 of them. Then, Little Jing Kong said indifferently, "What's so strange about me not being able to solve the remaining questions? I'm a student. I came here to study because I don't know how to solve them. If I know how to solve them, why do I still need a teacher?" Listen to his infuriating tone. Teacher Sun lost all his face. He grabbed the ferrule and hit Little Jing Kong's palm. In the end, he did not hit him and fell down. The whole class roared with laughter. The scene was like a large-scale car accident in the Imperial College. It was said that the students from the other 4 classes all came to watch. The whole school knew about Teacher Sun's embarrassing appearance. It was no wonder that Teacher Sun was so angry that he cried. It was really embarrassing. Teacher Jiang said earnestly, "Don't be in a hurry to scold Jing Kong. Although he was wrong to target Teacher Sun, he did not use you to support himself. He is different from those rich playboys." "Thank you, Teacher Jiang. I will talk to him." Xiao Lulang thanked Teacher Jiang sincerely. Then he apologized to Teacher Sunday. He turned around and went to the classroom to bring the little fellow out. "Tell me, why did you bully Teacher Sun?" Xiao Lulang asked. The two of them stood behind a large tree, the thick and solid tree trunk perfectly blocking their figures. Little Jing Kong said seriously, "Brother-in-law, what you said is wrong. How can this be called bullying?" He said it wrongly. He is not knowledgeable, but he doesn't admit it. He doesn't humbly ask for advice. Doesn't he know that there is always someone to learn from? If he is wrong, then he is wrong. Can't he just admit it? If he knows he is wrong, then he can change for the better. When scholar Xiangshan wrote a poem, he knew to read it to the shepherd boy and the old woman. He would not look down on children. When it came to reasoning, he quoted from many sources. Xiao Lulang was originally very angry, but when he heard this, he suddenly felt like laughing. Perhaps this was the difference between his own child and other people's children. He was clearly wrong, but he was still pleasantly surprised by his every bit of improvement. Xiao Lulang asked, "Who told you the story of Scholar Xiangshan?" Little Jing Kong snorted, "Son-in-law. He could learn and use it flexibly." Okay. However, Xiao Lulang knew him very well. This kid was a bully. He said, "This is not a reason for you to bully Teacher Sun in front of everyone. Are you going to tell me yourself? Or do you want to tell me in front of Jiao Jiao later?" When Gu Jiao was mentioned, little Jing Kong became listless. Xiao Lulang was very good at poking at people's weak spots. After little Jing Kong was caught, he obediently confessed his motive. The cause of the incident was that little Jing Kong brought the baby eagle to school and almost bit off Qin Chuyu's manhood. Teacher Sun did not protect him like Teacher Jiang did. Instead, he timidly handed him over. He was very disappointed in Teacher Sunday. From then on, he already felt that Teacher Sun was not worthy of being his teacher. Xiao Lulang did not expect the little guy to be so vengeful. Xiao Lulang considered his words carefully and said to him, "Teacher Sun did do something wrong. He should not have lowered his head to power. However, have you ever thought that not everyone has to be as brave as Teacher Jiang?" "Why not?" Little Jing Kong did not understand. Xiao Lulang didn't know how to explain it to him. Perhaps it was because the people he came into contact with were all extremely brave people. So he had an established understanding. Everyone should be righteous, brave, and fearless. However, in fact, self-protection was a person's instinct. One day, when he left Gu Jiao and his home and went to a wider place, he would find that people like Teacher Sun were the people he met the most. Teacher Sun did not mean to harm him. He also worked hard to teach him. To be fair, he was an excellent teacher in all aspects, except for his incompetence in dealing with the baby eagle. Xiao Lulang patted his little bald head and said, "You can have higher standards for yourself, but lower standards for others." Why? Little Jing Kong still did not understand. Xiao Lulang thought for a while and said, "Because they may not be as good as you." This was the first time that the bad brother-in-law praised little Jing Kong. Little Jing Kong's numerous words of debate were stuck in his throat. His throat was dry, his palms were hot, and his cheeks were red. Who is good? The little guy looked up at the sky and walked away with his hands and feet. Finally, under Xiao Liulang's mediation, little Jing Kong came to Teacher Sun and apologized for his provocation. In fact, he felt a little wronged, because he was right about the ancestral rate. Teacher Sun accepted little Jing Kong's apology. Just when he thought that Xiao Lulang was finally going to take the little bastard away, Xiao Lulang suddenly said seriously, "About the ancestral rate, I will try my best to verify it. If Jing Kong is right, then I hope Teacher Sun can also apologize to Jing Kong, because you have wronged him." As soon as he said this, Teacher Sun was stunned. Who would stand up for a child like this. Was he crazy to calculate the ancestral rate? Who did he think he was? Even little Jing Kong did not expect his bad brother-in-law to say this. Although he did not know whether it was difficult to calculate the ancestral rate, his bad brother-in-law was willing to believe him. Teacher's son gradually recovered from the shock. He did not believe that Xiao Lulang could calculate the ancestral rate to 7 digits, so he accepted the bet without any pressure. After sitting in the carriage, little Jing Kong curled his lips and said, "What if I am wrong?" Xiao Lulang did not care and said, "Then I will go and apologize to Teacher Sunday." What's the big deal? What's the big deal? How embarrassing. Little Jing Kong was silent for a moment, then suddenly moved closer to Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lulang looked at him and said, "What's wrong?" Little Jing Kong took a deep breath, clenched his fists, and said, "I will let you hug me." His bad brother-in-law stood up for him because he was obsessed with his charm and could not help himself. Then he would sacrifice himself. Xiao Lulang looked at him strangely. "Thank you, but I don't want to hug you." When Xiao Lulang and little Jing Kong returned to Bishui Alley, Gu Jiao, Gu Yan, and Gu Xiaoshan were not back yet. Gu Jiao took a job at the clinic, so she went to see patients. As for Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan, they were learning at their master's house. When they were eating at his master's house, Gu Yan felt that his master's wife looked at Gu Xiaoshan strangely. He wanted to say something, but Gu Xiaoshan was so engrossed in eating that he did not notice it at all. After getting on the carriage, Gu Yan asked Gu Xiaoshan, "Do you feel that your master's wife treats you differently recently?" Gu Xiaoshan was shocked and said, "Ah, what's the difference? Master's wife doesn't like me anymore?" Gu Yan thought, "Obviously, she likes you too much. That look in her eyes is as if she wants to pack you up and bring you back to her house, never letting you go again." Gu Yan said seriously, "I think she likes you. You have to be careful. I am afraid that master will get jealous and take revenge on you." Gu Xiaoshan. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find online. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/112621257. HTML Genius. Memorize the website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 275. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. The place where Gu Jiao went to see patients today was a 3-story house in the east of the city. The old master in the house was a scholar and taught at the nearby academy. The madam's family was quite wealthy, so their family background was not bad. The patient this time was their eldest son. He was 20 years old this year and had just passed the county-level examination. The family was very happy, but unfortunately, he had contracted a serious illness a few days ago. They sent him to a nearby clinic, but they were turned away, saying that it was smallpox and that he should stay at home to be treated. The clinic had prescribed medicine, but after taking it for a few days, they did not get better. They had heard from a student at the academy that the Miracle Hands Hall had good medical skills, so they went to ask for help. Who knew that it would be a female doctor? The husband and wife were disappointed. Gu Jiao had been practicing medicine for a long time, so she was used to this kind of look. There were no female doctors in Zhao country, so the status of female doctors was low. It was not something that she could change with just a few accidents. She did not have any ambition to be a great person. Gu Jiao entered the room. Since she was already here, the husband and wife could not refuse her treatment. The county-level scholar's mental condition was not very good. Lying on the bed, He was somewhat panicked and irritated. From his symptoms, fever, headache, papules, it was indeed similar to smallpox. But after careful examination, Gu Jiao found that it was not the case. It's an allergic rash, Gu Jiao said. This was a severe allergic reaction. It was not easy for him to survive until today. Many severe allergic reactions could cause shock or suffocation. It could only be said that this county-level scholar was very lucky. Gu Jiao took out a few tablets of loratadine from the small medicine box and put them in a porcelain bottle. She handed it to the husband and wife. Once a day, 1 tablet at a time. Swallow it with warm water. After eating, come to the clinic for a follow-up examination. This is it? The wife looked at the small medicine bottle in her hand and opened her mouth in disbelief, but they said it was smallpox. Gu Jiao said he has a mild cold and an allergic rash. At first glance, it does look like smallpox, but he really isn't. The two of you don't have to worry. However, allergic rash was not a minor illness. If it became serious, it could be fatal at any time. He was lucky this time, but he had to be more careful in the future. What did he touch that made him like this? The woman recalled carefully and said, that day, he ate a peach. In the afternoon, he started to feel uncomfortable all over. I didn't pay much attention to it. I just thought that the peach's fur was stuck to his body. I let him take a bath, and he seemed to feel better. The next day, it was even worse. Gu Jiao did not have an allergen test paper for the time being, so she could only try to keep the patient away from peaches. Don't let him come into contact with peaches in the future. Okay. The woman agreed. She was clearly a young female doctor, but why was her words inexplicably convincing? No matter what, other doctors would not be able to cure his son. He could only try this young female doctor's method first. The woman went into the house to feed her son the medicine. Xiao Sanzi received the consultation fee. The consultation fee was 2 taels of silver, and the medical fee was 1 tael of silver. This was at the foot of the emperor, so this fee was already considered very generous. Gu Jiao carried a small basket out of the house and got into the carriage. Xiao Sanzi took the consultation fee and sat on the outer seat. He said to Gu Jiao, Miss Gu, are we going back? Gu Jiao nodded. Yes, let's go back. There was nothing else. Okay. Xiao Sanzi grabbed the horsewhip and drove the carriage forward slowly. The carriage had not gone far when suddenly, several men on horses galloped over. They were extremely fast and did not care about the people on the street. The people hurriedly avoided them, but there was still an old man who could not avoid them. His courage was knocked over, and he fell to the ground. The main culprit did not even look back and left. The old man fell on the side of a road and could not get up for a long time. This naturally caused a lot of sighs. A young man who was not from the city spoke. He asked the shop assistant who came out to watch the scene, Brother, isn't this at the foot of the emperor? How can someone dare to ride a horse like this? The shop assistant said, You don't know? Didn't you see the clothes they were wearing? The young man said, They were too fast, I didn't pay attention. The shop assistant looked at the back of the few people and said, They are people from the marshal's mansion. Marshal's mansion? The young man frowned. He had not been in the capital for long and was not clear about the situation in the capital. The shop assistant patiently explained. They were originally general of Agile Cavalry of Hushan Barracks. A few days ago, they were conferred the title of Marshal of the World's Army. Those people are from the marshal's mansion. The young man was puzzled, so arrogant. The shop assistant hurriedly made a shushing gesture. Sho, you can't talk nonsense. They must have an urgent matter. Otherwise, they would not be like this. What urgent matter? They almost killed someone on the street. Everyone knew that this was just an excuse, but no one dared to expose the truth. The general of Agile Cavalry, surnamed Tang, was Empress Dowager Zhuang's confidant. When Empress Dowager Zhuang returned from her illness, the first thing she did was promote him to Marshal of the World's Army. She openly took away Marquis Xian Ping's military power. Sister, the people of Tang Manor are too much. In a tea house facing the street, a girl in purple said to the Taoist nun opposite her, This is not the first time they have used their power to bully people. Earlier in Willow Lane, I saw a servant of Tang Manor beating up a commoner. They said that the commoner owed Tang Manor money, but even if they owed money, they could not beat him up like that. The Taoist nun did not speak, and only quietly sipped her tea. The purple-clothed girl leaned on the table, leaned in front of her and whispered, "Elder sister, do you think that the rumor is true?" The Taoist nun looked at her. "What rumor?" The girl in purple said, "That Marshal Tang is the Empress Dowager's illegitimate son." The Taoist nun looked at her coldly. "Do you want to die?" The girl in purple stuck out her tongue, a bit intimidated by her sister, but still mustered up her courage and said, "I heard that the Empress Dowager almost married Princess Ning into him." The Taoist nun pushed her sister back to her seat, looked at the noisy street, and said, "Ziwan, go help that old man and buy all his tea." "Yes." The servant girl on the side bowed and was about to go downstairs when she heard the Taoist nun say, "Forget it, there's no need. Someone has already gone." The servant girl and the girl in purple looked at the old man at the same time and saw a girl in green walk through the crowd to help him up. "Ah, sister, it's her." The girl in purple recognized Gu Jiao, the one who gave the top scorer a flower hairpin. No, the top scorer of the 3 tripod cauldrons gave her a flower hairpin. Why is she here? The girl in purple still could not forget the new top scorer and thought of the girl who had been treated differently by the new top scorer. She was not good-looking, but after the flower hairpin incident, her appearance and dressing had become popular in the capital. Even the girl in purple had a small flower on her face. The Taoist nun looked at Gu Jiao and murmured, "Yes, it's really fate." After Gu Jiao helped the old man up, she bought a caddy of tea leaves from him. Perhaps the surrounding people felt that their behavior of standing by and doing nothing was worse than a little girl's. So they also bought the old man's tea leaves one after another. The basket of tea bags was sold out in an instant. "Thank you, miss, thank you." The old man cupped his hands and thanked her excitedly. Gu Jiao turned around and got into the carriage. The Taoist nun didn't withdraw her gaze until the carriage disappeared at the end of the street. Gu Jiao gave the tea leaves she bought to Xiao Sanzi and then returned to Bishui Alley. Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshun hadn't returned yet, so little Jing Kong went to his master's place. Senior servant Fang was cooking in the kitchen. Xiao Lulang plunged into the study and didn't even notice Gu Jiao pushing the door open. It was rare for him to be so absent-minded. Gu Jiao walked over and found that he was drawing. "What is this?" Gu Jiao asked. The light in the room was a little dim. She wanted to see the drawing clearly, so she moved closer. When Xiao Lulang heard her voice, her forehead was very close to his. Her warm breath intertwined with his. Xiao Liulang's heart suddenly jumped. His eyelashes trembled slightly. He felt that he should avoid her, but he didn't move. "Arithmetic," Xiao Lulang said. "I'm cutting a circle." "Cutting a circle? You want to calculate the ancestral rate?" Gu Jiao wasn't sure if the ratio of pi was called the ancestral rate in this spacetime. "You know about the ancestral rate?" Xiao Lulang was very surprised. Even though he knew that she had a lot of secrets, he didn't know that she had so many secrets and knew about the ancestral rate. Hearing that it was the ancestral rate, Gu Jiao understood that this spacetime also had parts that overlapped with the spacetime she lived in. For example, pi. Originally, Lu Hui calculated it to 4 decimals and called it the Hui ratio. Later, Lord Zhu calculated it to 7 decimals and called it the ancestral rate. Among them, Lu Hui in the Wei and Jin dynasties used the circle cutting technique. No matter which space-time it was, Lord Zhu's fixing technique was lost. Otherwise, Xiao Lulang would be using the fixing technique now. The circle cutting technique used the area of a regular polygon inside a circle to infinitely approximate the area of a circle. It was a method to find the ratio of pi. Cut to make it smaller and lose less. Cut again and again until it can't be cut, and then combine with the circle and lose nothing. Lu Hui started from the hexagon in the circle and cut the 3072 hexagons. Only then was he able to accurately calculate the number between 1415 and 1416. The amount of calculation was huge and terrifying. If he used calculus, it would be much faster. Gu Jiao did not change her expression and said, "I heard it from the students in the girls' school." The girls' school also had arithmetic classes, but Xiao Lulang was not clear about the specific content. However, he knew that Gu Jiao was extremely smart. If she really heard it, she might not forget it. Gu Jiao said again, "Why did you suddenly think of calculating this? Is it the homework of the Hanlin Academy?" "No." Xiao Lulang shook his head. He hesitated for a moment, but still told her about the little Jing Kong and Teacher Sunday. He mainly wanted to verify if the little Jing Kong's ancestral rate and those arithmetic questions were taught to him by Gu Jiao. As for making Teacher Sun cry and making a bet, he skipped over it. He only said that they had a harmonious discussion about the ancestral rate. Gu Jiao nodded and shook her head. She did teach little Jing Kong arithmetic, but she did not teach him those questions, nor did she talk about the ancestral rate. Can he recite such a long ancestral rate? Gu Jiao was very surprised. Xiao Lulang called little Jing Kong in. When little Jing Kong saw Gu Jiao, he almost thought that his bad brother-in-law had secretly told on him. However, when he saw that Gu Jiao's expression was normal, he secretly felt relieved. Xiao Lulang said, "Recite the ancestral rate that you recited in front of Teacher Sun again." Little Jing Kong recited it obediently. Xiao Lulang said, "I don't know if it's right, so I have to calculate it." Most people would never believe that little Jing Kong was right, because there were only 7 numbers in the book, but he recited 17. Xiao Lulang did not immediately deny little Jing Kong. It was not that he felt that little Jing Kong was right, but he had no way to prove that little Jing Kong was wrong. He would not use his status to oppress people just because he was older and had studied for more than 10 years. A scolding might be able to subdue a child, but it was not because the child was convinced, but because the child had given up on his desire to learn. Gu Jiao knew that little Jing Kong's recitation was completely correct. "Who taught you that?" Gu Jiao asked. "I read it in a book," little Jing Kong said. "What book? Can you show it to us?" Gu Jiao asked again. "Of course." Little Jing Kong ran out and rummaged through his pile of small rags for a while, and found a yellowed book with curly edges. He found a booklet and handed it to Gu Jiao. "Jiao Jiao, here." Gu Jiao took the booklet and read it together with Xiao Lulang. With just a glance, the two of them were stunned. Gu Jiao was stunned because she saw familiar words and formulas. Xiao Lulang was stunned because he saw patterns and words that he did not understand. At the same time, under these strange words and patterns, there were annotations in another language. It was the language of the Yen Kingdom. No wonder little Jing Kong could understand some of it. He had been learning the language of the Yen Kingdom recently. It was strange that he had a book from the Yen Kingdom. And Xiao Lulang turned to the last page and saw a big royal seal on it. He gasped. Could this be the letter of credence of the Yen Kingdom? The Yen Kingdom was the most powerful country among the 6 countries, but who would have thought that it was just a small country a few decades ago? Suddenly, a powerful state preceptor came to the Yen Kingdom one day. He brought 6 ancient books with him. The Yen Kingdom rose like a bamboo shoot after a spring rain because of the secrets in the ancient books. The treatment of leprosy was also learned from the ancient books. In the end, the 6 ancient books were sealed as letters of credence. They were kept in the palace of the Yen Kingdom and guarded by hundreds of imperial experts day and night. If this letter of credence was real, then the one in the palace of the Yen Kingdom was fake? It should be impossible, right? After all, Jing Kong was just a little monk who was dizzy with meat. Gu Jiao did not know what letter of credence it was, but she could conclude that the simplified Chinese characters and advanced mathematics formulas in this book did not belong to this time and space. Could it be that there were other time-traveling seniors here? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated faster and more fully. Millions of novels are free to read. You can find all the novels that you can't find on the internet here. https://www.zhhbqg com/89642_896/1125950034. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 276. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels can be read for free. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found online. Nanny Fong finished cooking dinner, and the family went to the main room to eat. Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshun were eating with Master Lu and Nanxiang, so they didn't have to wait for them. Although Grand Aunt wasn't there, Granduncle was, so the atmosphere at the dinner table was still good. However, one of Granduncle's eyes was swollen, so they didn't ask what happened. After dinner, Gu Jiao helped Nanny Fong clean up the dishes, little Jing Kong went to walk the chicken, and Xiao Lulang went back to the room to study the ancient book that he thought was unlikely to be the national book of the Yan Kingdom. Even if there were translations and annotations, it wasn't easy to master it. Gu Jiao took more than 10 years to go from elementary mathematics to advanced mathematics. Of course, it was related to the progress of education. But the education resources in her previous life were more extensive and systematic. Xiao Lulang was crossing the river by feeling his way. The imperial exam didn't test arithmetic, and he didn't spend much effort on arithmetic in the past. This was the rhythm of a liberal arts student suddenly getting an advanced mathematics textbook. Gu Jiao, starting tomorrow, I'll give my husband 6 walnuts. The family did their own things while waiting for Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshun to come home. In the past, the two of them would arrive home around 4:45 in the evening, and the latest would be 4:45 in the evening. At 4:45 in the evening, Madame Yao couldn't sit still anymore. Every time she heard footsteps outside, she would turn her head to look. When the footsteps passed, she would secretly sigh. After another quarter of an hour, the sound of a carriage finally came from the door. Little Jing Kong had already taken a small bath and was lying in bed. When he heard the sound, he crawled out of bed, put on his shoes, and ran out. I'll do it, I'll do it. The night in May was slightly cold, but it wasn't cold. He was wearing thin pajamas, and he opened the courtyard door with force. He looked up. Dear brother. The person who came was Gu Chongqing. Behind Gu Chongqing, a carriage slowly passed by. It turned out that the sound of the carriage had come from it. Gu Chongqing was riding a horse, but when he entered the alley, he dismounted and led the horse inside. Gu Chongqing looked at the little guy who had come all the way to open the door for him. He was suddenly in a good mood. He looked at the little guy's little pajamas and asked, "Are you going to sleep?" Little Jing Kong nodded. Yes. Then he shook his head. I'm waiting for Brother Yen and Brother Xiaoshun. Gu Chongqing turned to look at the end of the alley. Have they been studying so late recently? Little Jing Kong shook his head. No, it's only so late today. Has older Brother Yen and older Brother Xiaoshun returned? Yao Shi asked from the courtyard. Everyone in the family spoke with the identity and tone of Little Jing Kong. Little Jing Kong turned around and said, "It's dear brother." Yao Shi's attitude towards Gu Chongqing was much better than before, but there was no motherly love and filial piety between them. They just treated each other as familiar guests. Are you worried about Ayen? Gu Chongqing looked at Yao Shi and asked. When it came to Gu Yan, the two of them had a common topic. Yao Shi sighed. Yes, he didn't come so late in the past. I'm worried that he might have been delayed on the road. It's not raining today. Gu Chongqing took down the game that was hanging on the saddle and put it on the stone table. He said to Yao Shi, I'll go and look for him. Yao Shi looked at him gratefully. Will it delay you tomorrow? No. Gu Chongqing said. Yao Shi saw that he answered so straightforwardly that he should be fine. She was relieved and said, That's good, that's good. I'll go. Gu Chongqing did not even have time to say goodbye to his younger sister and brother-in-law. He turned around and left the residence. Gu Jiao saw that Xiao Lulang had finished a math problem. She also noticed that it was getting late. She went out and asked, Yan and Xiaoshun haven't returned yet? Yao Shi said. Shitzi went to look for them. Eldest brother came? Gu Jiao looked at the game on the table. Little Jing Kong was stepping on the stone bench and pulling the rabbit and pheasant inside. Gu Jiao walked over and picked him up. She went to the well to wash her hands and carried him back to his room. Go to sleep. Don't come down again. Okay. Little Jing Kong obediently agreed. Still not back? When Gu Jiao passed by the study room, Xiao Lulang asked her. Gu Jiao said, Not yet. I'll go take a look. You stay at home and watch over Jing Kong. Don't let him run around. Most people could not watch over little Jing Kong. If she was not around, this child would be very naughty. Sure enough, as soon as Gu Jiao left, little Jing Kong sneaked out from the west room. Xiao Lulang stood at the door expressionlessly and looked at him condescendingly. Little Jing Kong thought for a while and made a final struggle. I want to pee. The place where Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshun learned martial arts was in the north of the city. It was not a wealthy district, but it was not poor either. It was a place with beautiful scenery. There were two ways to get there from Baishui Tong. One way was to go through Chang and Street and go to Baishui Street. This road was more prosperous and was often used by Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshun. The other way was to go through Xuanwu Street and go to the official road at the end. The further one went, the fewer people there were. The two usually took this road when they went there. When they came back, they did not take this road. It was too dark and they were afraid of accidents. But to be safe, Gu Jiao and Gu Chongqing still took both roads. Gu Chongqing went to the official road and Gu Jiao went to Baishui Street. At this time, Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshun were indeed on Baishui Street. The reason why they were delayed was that the wheel of the carriage was broken. There was a tea house nearby. Lu Quan asked the two to sit in the tea house for a while he went to find someone to fix the carriage. The two were bored sitting in the tea house. When they saw a seller selling tonghulu, they remembered that little Jing Kong and Angu loved tonghulu. So they went to buy some for them. But how can we give it to Angu? Gu Xiaoshun asked. Send it to her. Gu Yan said. Oh. Gu Xiaoshun thought it was feasible and asked for a few more. Angu can't come out all the time. Buy a few more. She eats one a day. Gu Yan nodded and reached for his money bag. At this moment, a thief rushed over and bumped into Gu Yan. He stole Gu Yan's money bag. Gu Yan touched his waist. Oh, my money bag. The two quickly put down the tonghulu and chased after the thief. After a few steps, the thief was caught by someone. A tall and mighty figure stepped on the thief, causing the surrounding commoners to cheer. The two went to retrieve their money bags from the thief. Gu Yan suddenly felt two eyes on him that could not be ignored. He looked up and saw a man full of heroic spirit sitting in a room on the second floor of a restaurant. The man had strong facial features and a tall and sturdy body. He looked straight at Gu Yan. When their eyes met, he raised his cup to Gu Yan and smiled. Gu Yan frowned. He did not like this kind of smile. It made him uncomfortable. Found it. Let's go. Gu Xiaoshun said to Gu Yan. Okay. Gu Yan did not pay any more attention to the man. He went back to the restaurant with Gu Xiaoshun. However, Lu Quan had not returned yet. The two were bored to death waiting. Suddenly, the young warrior who caught the thief walked over. He cupped his hands to the two of them and said, My family's young master wants to be friends with the two young masters. I wonder if the two young masters would be willing to do me the honor. Who is your family's master? Gu Xiaoshun asked. That one. The young warrior pointed to the restaurant across the street. It was the man who raised his cup to him and smiled. Gu Yan frowned and looked away. Gu Xiaoshun looked and said, I don't know him. I don't want to be friends. The young warrior was stunned. He did not expect the other party to refuse so directly. I'm afraid the two of you don't know the identity of my family's young master. My family's young master is actually, hey, the carriage is ready. Gu Xiaoshun's sharp eyes saw the carriage outside. He pulled Gu Yan and said, "Brother Yan, let's go." The two of them got into the carriage without looking back. They did not give the young warrior a chance to show off. They thought that they would be able to get home safely, but unexpectedly, the carriage broke down again. Lu Quan said, "Forget it. We won't fix it for now. I'll go hire a carriage. You two go home first." As soon as he said that, an incomparably luxurious carriage stopped beside their carriage. "Is the carriage broken?" Accompanied by a man's low laughing voice, the curtain of the carriage was lifted, revealing a resolute face. When Gu Yan saw that it was him, he was annoyed to death. The man jumped out of the carriage and crouched down to check the broken wheels. He said, "It's no longer usable. If you don't mind, I can send you back. Where do you live?" Hearing this familiar tone, Lu Quan thought, could it be that he knew Xiao Shun and Gu Yan? But when he turned his head and saw that Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshun did not want to talk to him, he understood. He cupped his hands and said, "We won't trouble you, young master. We'll go back ourselves. There's no carriage shop nearby." The man clapped his hands and said with a smile, "My younger brother is also a scholar from Qinghe Academy. I saw that they were wearing Qinghe Academy's uniform and seemed to be going the same way as me, so I thought of giving you a ride. But it's right for you to be cautious. Go forward and walk east at the third intersection. There's a carriage shop about 2 li away. You can rent a carriage there." After saying that, the man took his leave. Lu Quan secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that he had wronged the person, but it was fine. He could rent a carriage himself and save himself the trouble. Lu Quan went to rent a carriage. Gu Xiaoshun and Gu Yan stayed in the carriage and waited. The two of them fell asleep while waiting. When Gu Xiaoshun woke up, she found that Gu Yan had disappeared. Gu Changqing went to Nanfeng residence. "They left 2 hours ago. They haven't reached home yet?" Nan Xiang asked with a frown. She was wearing a veil, so Gu Changqing did not see her ferocious and terrifying face. But even if he saw it, he would not care about it and would just forget about it. Gu Changqing said, "Maybe they've arrived now. I'll go back and look for them." Gu Changqing returned from Whitestone Street. On the way back, he met Lu Quan and Gu Xiaoshun. "Where's Gu Yan?" he asked. He's gone," Gu Xiaoshun said anxiously. "What happened?" Gu Changqing asked. Gu Xiaoshun recounted what had happened along the way. Gu Changqing narrowed his eyes slightly. "What did that man look like?" Gu Xiaoshun described in detail. Gu Changqing's expression immediately became cold. "Tang Ming. That's right. The person who wanted to befriend Gu Yan was the Tiger Mountain Barracks Lieutenant Tang Ming. He was no longer a lieutenant. After his uncle became the Grand Marshal, he was immediately appointed as a deputy general. His rank was now higher than Gu Changqing's senior lieutenant. When he first saw Gu Yan at the restaurant, he was deeply stunned. When he met Gu Yan for the first time, Gu Yan was tightly covered by Gu Changqing's cloak. Only a pair of slender legs and a jade hand were exposed. Therefore, he didn't recognize that Gu Yan was the beautiful youth that Gu Changqing had held in his arms. In addition, the old chancellor was a very low-key person. The carriage he sat in was also low-key. It looked ordinary and didn't look like the transportation of a large family. Therefore, he didn't feel that Gu Yan was a person that couldn't be provoked. Gu Yan was lying on the soft bed. Because he was drugged, his breathing was a bit hurried. His cheeks were slightly hot, and there was a seductive blush on his face. The youth's figure was tall and slender. His Adam's apple wasn't big, but it was very delicate. Tang Ming had played with so many youths, but he had never seen such a peerless beauty. Just by looking, he felt like his soul was being stolen away. Gu Yan slowly woke up. The effect of the drug was still there, and he couldn't move. His heart skipped a beat. From the corner of his eyes, he saw the face that he had seen countless times tonight. A strong sense of disgust suddenly rose from the bottom of his heart. However, Tang Ming smiled. He was indeed a beauty. Even when he was angry, he was still so seductive. The corners of his eyes that were slightly red really stirred up his heart. Tang Ming raised his hand. Because he practiced martial arts for many years, his palm and fingertips had thin calluses. He only lightly touched Guyan's face, and a red mark quickly appeared on that delicate skin. Tang Ming's gaze became lustful. Guyan's stomach felt nauseous. He used what little strength he had left to yell, "You get lost." This kind of yell wasn't intimidating at all. Tang Ming smiled. The feeling was too good. He wasn't satisfied with just touching Guyan's face. His fingers moved, and he lifted Guyan's lapel. His skin was like porcelain. Tang Ming suddenly bent down and took a deep breath in the crook of Guyan's neck. "You smell so good." Guyan was disgusted. He looked at the top of this man's head in disgust and endured the other's breath. "You are seeking death." These words caused Tang Ming to pause. He raised his head and calmly looked at Guyan. "So, it's a little wild horse. This prince loves to tame wild horses that don't listen. In a moment, I'll give you a bowl of medicine, and you'll cry and beg me." "I am Marquis Ding and son, Marquis Dingen?" Tang Ming couldn't stop laughing. How could Marquis Ding and son sit in such a broken carriage? "Why don't you say you're Marquis Xianping's son?" Marquis Xianping's name was much more famous than Marquis Ding, and if this really was Marquis Xianping's son, Tang Ming didn't dare to touch him. As for Marquis Ding, unthinking of Gu Changqing, Tang Ming's expression darkened. That was also a hard nut to crack. However, he didn't remember Gu Changqing having such a younger brother. Unless he was that stepmother's son. Gu Changqing didn't get along with his stepmother. Even his stepmother's son and daughter were not very fond of them. Gu Changqing wouldn't care about the life or death of this younger brother. So whether he was or not wasn't important. Guyan saw that Marquis Ding and's identity wasn't useful and said with difficulty, "Empress. Empress Dowager will kill you." Tang Ming looked at him in amusement. "Oh, why would the Empress Dowager want to kill me?" "Guyan, the Empress Dowager, is my great-aunt." Tang Ming was stunned at first. Then he raised his head and laughed. "The Empress Dowager is your great-aunt? The Empress Dowager is your great-aunt? I don't know you, but I know the Empress Dowager. I know the Empress Dowager's family better than you." There were so many children in the Zhuang family. He had seen every one of them, including the jade-like young master, Royal Prince and, unfortunately, Royal Prince and was the Empress Dowager's favorite and was also Imperial Tutor Zhuang's grandson. With his status, he couldn't afford to offend the other party. Gu Yan glared at him. The effects of the drug were very strong. He had only said a few words, but he was already about to fall asleep. He tried his best to stay awake. "If you don't let me go, the Empress Dowager really will kill you." Ha ha. Tang Ming laughed arrogantly. "Whether or not the Empress Dowager will kill me, I don't know. Why don't I tell you who I am first? I am the nephew of the Grand Marshal of the land's armed forces. My uncle is the Empress Dowager's trusted aide. The first thing the Empress Dowager did when she returned to the capital was to promote my uncle from the great general of agile cavalry to the Grand Marshal of the land's armed forces. His military power is below Marquis Xianping. Tell me, will the Empress Dowager kill me? Just because she touched a little scholar like you?" Guyan didn't have the strength to speak anymore. His resistance just now had caused his face to redden even more. Tang Ming liked it very much. He lifted Guyan's chin. "Be good. Don't be afraid. I will treat you well. After you take this pill, you won't feel any discomfort." As he spoke, he took out a porcelain bottle from his bosom and poured out a dark red pill into his palm. Guyan gritted his teeth. Unfortunately, even if he hadn't been drugged, his little bit of strength wasn't enough in the eyes of an expert like Tang Ming, let alone the fact that he had been drugged. Tang Ming grabbed his chin and forced him to swallow the pill. Guyan struggled with all his might, but it was all in vain. As the pill entered his stomach, his consciousness gradually dissipated. Tang Ming smiled triumphantly. He pulled down the curtains and tore the clothes on the floor. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels can be read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896422826/112592317. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 277. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. Gu Jiao also came to Whitestone Street. She shuttled through the crowd, looking for Gu Yan's figure. When she passed by a tea house, she vaguely felt that it was familiar, as if she had been here before. But she clearly hadn't. It was Gu Yan. He had been here before. Gu Jiao went back to the tea house to look. When she passed by a corner, her footsteps stopped. She looked at a spacious but secluded alley on the left. She didn't know why, but she suddenly couldn't breathe. She covered her stuffy chest. There was a burst of pain there. Yan. After Gu Chongqing came out of Nanfeng residence, he went back along Whitestone Street and also found this place. He saw Gu Jiao and urged his horse to rush over. Seeing that Gu Jiao's expression was not right, he hurriedly asked, "What's wrong?" Gu Jiao's hand that was holding her lapel tightened. She looked at the dark and boundless night in the east. Yan is there. Gu Chongqing followed her gaze and looked into the distance. He retracted his gaze and stretched out his hand to her. "Come up." Gu Jiao grabbed his hand and jumped onto the horse. She held the saddle herself. Gu Chongqing didn't have to worry about her falling like he was worried about Gu Yan. He pulled the reins tightly. "Go." The horse seemed to feel its master's mood and quickly galloped in the night. "Which way?" At the fork in the road, Gu Chongqing asked Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao turned her head and looked. "This way." Gu Chongqing's legs tightened around the horse's belly. He quickly rushed to the right side of the street. When he crossed the street and entered a luxurious alley, he guessed what was going on. This alley was very famous in the capital, and it was mostly used by the rich and powerful to indulge in debauchery. Someone had once brought him here and said that they would give him a house. At that time, he did not know much about these things, but he was not used to accepting bribes. The other party smiled and said, "Why are you being so polite? Lord Tang also bought a residence here. It's the one in front." Thinking up to this point, Gu Chongqing already knew where Tang Ming was. He couldn't wait any longer. He got off the horse and handed it over to Gu Jiao. Then he used his qing gong and disappeared into the night. The moment he left, something flashed through his mind, but it was too fast for him to grasp. The moonlight was dim and the candlelight was ambiguous. Tang Ming had already torn apart Gu Yan's outer and inner robes, leaving only a thin inner robe draped over his body. She was truly a rare beauty. Tang Ming caressed a pair of slender, fair legs beneath him and pressed down on Gu Yan. Bang! With a loud sound, the entire door fell straight to the ground. A strong murderous aura came from behind Tang Ming, and the curtains moved without any wind. Tang Ming felt a chill run down his spine. He raised his hand to grab the long sword by his pillow, but before he could touch it, a long whip pierced through the curtains and wrapped around his neck. He didn't even have time to resist before he was ruthlessly pulled up and thrown against the wall. After a violent collision, he fell heavily to the ground. This fall was not light, and he was stunned for a long time before he got up. Gu Chongqing dashed to the bed and lifted the curtains. When he saw Gu Yan's naked body, his gaze turned cold. He did not use the blanket on the bed to wrap Gu Yan up. Instead, he quickly took off his outer robe and wrapped Gu Yan up tightly. Gu Yan's consciousness was scattered, and his body was slightly hot. He had been drugged. Gu Chongqing wanted to kill someone, But there was nothing more important than Gu Yan's life. He carried Gu Yan up, and Gu Yan lay weakly in his arms. "Don't," he said weakly. Gu Changqing's heart ached terribly. His arms that were holding Gu Yan were trembling uncontrollably. "It's me," he said softly. Gu Yan glanced at him in a daze. Actually, he couldn't see clearly anymore. He could only see a vague outline in front of him, but the other party's aura made him feel at ease. He parted his lips slightly. "Brother?" Gu Changqing's heart was crushed by this brother. Even though he knew that this brother was the same as the big brother that little Jing Kong called him, Gu Changqing's heart still trembled slightly. He suddenly wanted to tell him, "Yes, I'm your brother, your biological brother." Sob. After confirming the identity of the person who had come, Gu Yan suddenly felt wronged. His eyes, which hadn't even turned red in front of Tang Ming, suddenly turned red. The corners of his eyes and the tips of his eyebrows revealed an indescribable grievance. Gu Changqing's heart was instantly pierced into a sieve. He hugged Gu Yan's arm tightly. At this moment, he was about to lose all rationality. If Gu Yan's aura wasn't too weak, he really wanted to rush over and end Tang Ming. "Gu Changqing, it's you?" Tang Ming finally found some strength. He slowly got up from the ground, but before he could get up, he was kicked back down by Gu Changqing. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Gu Changqing looked at him with a murderous look. "Tang Ming, I'll settle this score with you." Tang Ming felt like he had seen a ghost. Why would Gu Changqing come here? Could it be that this brat, Tang Ming, suddenly remembered that he had seen Gu Changqing riding a horse with a youth on the streets? Could it be that this little beauty in front of him was the youth that Gu Changqing had protected in his arms? What was their relationship? This brat said that he was Marquis Ding, and son, could it really be? But didn't Gu Changqing only recognize his two younger brothers from the same mother? When had he cared about the life and death of a stepbrother? He looked so nervous, as if someone wanted to take his life. Was it necessary? Tang Ming had suffered some internal injuries. He clutched his aching abdomen and glared fiercely at Gu Changqing. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his other hand and sneered. "Isn't he just the son of a vixen? Don't you hate them? Why don't you give him to me? I'll discipline him for you." Tang Ming really didn't care about the child of his second wife. This kind of child wasn't favored in a normal family. Moreover, he had heard that Marquis Ding and second wife didn't have a high status and had been neglected all these years. She brought her son to live in an estate. Since that was the case, who was Gu Changqing trying to show by putting on a protective look? Gu Yan's breathing was very unstable. Gu Changqing resisted the urge to fight Tang Ming and finally glanced at Tang Ming. "If I were you, I would escape the capital overnight and never come back." "Heh." Tang Ming snorted disdainfully. If this had been in the past, Tang Ming might have been afraid of Gu Changqing threatening him like this. But now, his uncle was the Grand Marshal of the world's armed forces, and he had been promoted to Deputy General. Gu Changqing was just a small Hushan commandant. It wasn't enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. He wasn't afraid that Gu Changqing would go and complain. Although he was in the wrong in this matter, if it really got out, it would damage this young boy's reputation. When that time came, the entire capital would know that Gu Changqing's younger brother had been played by him, Tang Ming. Could Gu Changqing and this beautiful young boy afford to lose this kind of face? Gu Changqing didn't waste any more time with Tang Ming. He carried Gu Yan and used his qing gong to leave this place. Not long after they left, Gu Changqing ran into Gu Jiao, who had stopped her horse by the side of the road and was about to rush into the residence. Gu Changqing saw his mount and remembered that he had forgotten something. His horse had a strange temperament and normally wouldn't let others ride it. Did something happen to his younger sister? Gu Jiao didn't know what he was thinking. She looked at Gu Changqing, who was wrapped in Gu Yan's clothes. In that instant, a bloody light flashed through her eyes. Who did this? Tang Ming. You don't know him. A member of the Tang family? That's right. Gu Jiao looked at the residence and clenched her fists. She held back the violence in her blood and walked in front of Gu Changqing. She looked at Guyan's face and checked Guyan's pulse. Guyan's money pouch was gone. It contained his medicine. Gu Jiao's pouch also contained Guyan's medicine all year round. She first gave Guyan 2 pills and then took the water from the saddle for him to swallow. But in Guyan's situation, just taking medicine was clearly not enough. The two of them hurriedly brought Guyan back to Jade Water Alley. The night wind was a little cold. Gu Chongqing was afraid that Guyan would catch a cold, so he took off his inner clothes and only wore a thin inner garment. He carried Guyan and walked the whole way. Along the way, there were people who looked at them strangely from time to time, but they didn't recognize who he was. When they reached the door, Gu Jiao thought of something and said to Gu Chongqing, "Let's go to the son-in-law's room." Gu Chongqing understood. Okay. He carried Gu Yan to the next room. The old chancellor had just rested and was shocked when he saw this scene. How could this be? What happened? Gu Chongqing had never seen the old chancellor before, but as he came to Jade Water Alley more and more, he slowly knew the old chancellor's identity. As for how he became Xiao Liulong's granduncle, Gu Chongqing didn't know for now. He didn't deliberately ask about it. I'll explain to you later. Is there a side room? Gu Chongqing asked. Yes, there is. The west wing was empty. The old chancellor opened the door of the west wing and laid out a clean mattress. Gu Chongqing gently put Gu Yan on the bed. Gu Jiao brought a small medicine box over. With Gu Yan's physical condition, it wasn't suitable to induce vomiting. He could only use infusion to promote the metabolism of drugs. But in the process of metabolism, his organs had to bear a huge burden, which was undoubtedly very dangerous for people with congenital heart disease. Gu Jiao opened the small medicine box and gave Gu Yan a tonic infusion. Gu Jiao measured Gu Yan's blood pressure. The blood pressure was soaring abnormally, which should be caused by drugs. If it couldn't be lowered in a while, he had to use antihypertensive drugs. Gu Yan had already lost consciousness, but his hand was still grabbing Gu Chongqing's sleeve. He had been grabbing it before he fainted. Gu Chongqing didn't take his hand away. He just silently guarded in front of the bed. Soon, Gu Yan's body temperature rose. Gu Jiao put an ice pack on his forehead. Gu Yan's situation was difficult because he had a heart disease. He couldn't use drugs indiscriminately. So unless it was a last resort, Gu Jiao tried to adopt conservative treatment as much as possible. How is he? Gu Chongqing looked at the unconscious Gu Yan and asked with a hoarse voice. Gu Jiao adjusted the drip of the infusion bottle and whispered, "It's hard to say now. Although it was only 1 or 2 knockout drugs, it was too fatal for his body. Fortunately, he had been taking anti-heart failure drugs for the past year. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to bear it." Thinking of this, Gu Jiao thought of one thing. She could dream of Xiao Lulang and Gu Chongqing's accident. Why couldn't Gu Yan? She wasn't sure if Gu Chongqing and Xiao Liulong's accident would appear in her dream in advance, but at least she dreamed of it. But Gu Yan didn't dream of it even once. It couldn't be that Gu Yan wasn't close enough to her. She and Gu Yan were twins. They had the most intimate and difficult relationship in the world. Could it be that they were too close? In addition, she also realized that she couldn't predict her own danger. It was the same when the brothel collapsed, and it was the same when she was crushed under the roof with her great-aunt. She couldn't predict her own fate. Could it be that because she and Gu Yan were twins, she couldn't predict Gu Yan's fate? If that was the case, then Gu Yan's hidden guards would have to be recalled to the capital. After Tang Ming was beaten up by Gu Chongqing, he was no longer in the mood to play and rode his horse back to Tang Manor. Tang Manor was no longer a general's manor, but a marshal's manor. The courtyard was much more imposing. Tang Ming stood in front of 2 majestic stone lions. He straightened his clothes and brushed his sleeves to make sure no one would notice that he was fooling around. Only then did he step into the manor. Tang Yueshan had just finished practicing his swordsmanship in the courtyard. A servant handed him a towel. He took it and wiped the sweat off his forehead. Panting, he asked, "Is Minger back yet?" The servant replied, replying to master, "He hasn't. Perhaps he was delayed by official business. Recently, too many people have come to our residence to visit." "Master, you don't want to see them." So they went to find young master. The Tang family had two branches. Tang Yueshan was the second branch. He had an elder brother and sister-in-law. Tang Ming was the legitimate son of the first branch. Tang Yueshan's elder brother had been paralyzed for a long time, but Tang Yueshan didn't seize the first branch's property. He still let his elder brother be the head of the Tang family. His marshal's manor was next door to the Tang family. In the eyes of outsiders, the two families were still the same. Tang Yueshan didn't have any sons, only a few daughters. Everyone in the manor knew how much Tang Yueshan doted on his nephew. In the future, Tang Ming would not only inherit the first branch's property, but also Tang Yueshan's power. The servants of the marshal's manor all regarded Tang Ming as their young master. Tang Ming's biological father was paralyzed in bed and couldn't take care of him, so he asked his younger brother to take care of him for him. Tang Ming had worshipped his uncle since he was a child, so he was happy to stay with Tang Yueshan. Speak of the devil. Tang Yueshan was just wiping his sweat when he saw Tang Ming come over with a smile. "Uncle, I'm back." Tang Yueshan's serious face immediately showed a trace of joy. "Why are you so late? Are there too many official business in the military camp?" Tang Ming smiled and said, "What official business?" "Uncle, you don't want me to meet those officials in private. I came out a long time ago. I came back late because I went to buy your favorite spicy fragrant snails." As he spoke, he took out the food box he had hidden behind him. "Uncle, look. Is this from the restaurant you often go to?" When Tang Yueshan heard this, the joy in his heart overflowed. He opened the food box and took a sniff. Satisfied, he said, "Yes, this is the smell." The servant smiled and said, "Young master is being filial to you. We didn't expect this." Tang Yueshan smiled happily. After autumn, the field snails were the most plump and juicy. Although it wasn't the best time to eat snail meat, the fragrant snails from that restaurant were delicious. Besides, he valued Tang Ming's kindness more. "You haven't eaten, right?" Tang Yueshan looked at Tang Ming and asked. "No." Tang Ming shook his head. "Have someone set the table." Tang Yueshan ordered the servant. "Yes, sir." The servant hurried off. The weather was getting warmer. The food was placed in the courtyard. Tang Yueshan didn't eat at home often, and he didn't invite his daughters to eat. Tang Ming was the only one he doted on. Not only did he eat at the same table as him, but he could also enter and leave his courtyard freely. Tang Yueshan never got angry when he touched his things. "The bamboo shoots in the kitchen are so tender today," Tang Ming said. "Eat more." Tang Yueshan put a lot of food on Tang Ming's plate. Tang Ming buried his head in the food. Tang Yueshan was very satisfied when he saw Tang Ming eating heartily. He couldn't help but show a hint of affection. "After dinner, go say hello to your parents and come back quickly to rest. There's a martial arts competition in the barracks tomorrow. Don't forget." Tang Ming smiled obediently and said, "I didn't forget. Don't worry, uncle." Tang Yueshan naturally trusted Tang Ming. He had raised Tang Ming single-handedly. Tang Ming was smart, had a good constitution, was resilient, and was willing to endure hardships. Practicing martial arts was a boring and painful thing, but Tang Ming persevered. Not only that, but Tang Ming was also familiar with the art of war and knew how to use it. Tang Yueshan had high expectations for Tang Ming. Tang Yueshan added, "Also, you should control your temper. Don't get into fights with people in the barracks for no reason." Tang Ming smiled obediently and said, "I know, uncle. I just can't stand them being lazy. I'll pay attention in the future. If they make a mistake again, I'll talk to them nicely." "That's more like it." Tang Yueshan was very satisfied. Tang Ming's temper was a little spoiled, but who hadn't been young and hot-blooded? When he was young, he was also a troublemaker in the barracks. It was good that Tang Ming knew his mistakes and could change. After the uncle and nephew finished their meal, Tang Ming went to the first branch to say hello to his parents. This was something Tang Yueshan had asked Tang Ming to do every day. He wanted him to be filial to his parents and not disrespect his father just because he was paralyzed in bed. Tang Ming only removed all his disguises after he returned to his room. He sat on a chair and lifted his shirt. When he saw the bruise on his abdomen caused by Gu Changqing's kick, he was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Then he thought of Gu Yan and felt a little regretful. He savored the memory and narrowed his eyes. Such a delicious and beautiful young man. He had almost eaten him. Gu Jiao and Gu Changqing guarded Gu Yan for the whole night. He was in danger once in the middle of the night, so Gu Jiao gave him medicine. When it was close to dawn, his body temperature returned to normal, but he still didn't wake up. Gu Jiao looked at the small streak of dawn on the horizon, then looked at Gu Changqing, who had a cold expression the whole night, and said, "His condition is better than last night. His life won't be in danger for the time being. You go rest. I'll take care of him here." Gu Changqing paused and stood up. He looked at the unconscious Gu Yan with reluctance in his eyes. "Okay, I'll come back later." He walked to the door and was about to step over the threshold when he stopped and turned back. His gaze fell on Gu Yan's face. What's wrong?" Gu Jiao asked. Gu Changqing shook his head. "Forget it. It's nothing." If he heard it, then he heard it. This was no longer important. What was important was Tang Ming. He wanted Tang Ming's life. Digression. Everyone, do you still have monthly tickets? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964226/112566466. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 278. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated even faster. Millions of novels can be read for free. There are novels with connotations that can't be found online here. Today, the sky was gloomy. The soldiers of Hushan Barracks had already finished their morning drill and were standing in formation on the field. Tang Ming spurred his horse and walked past the square formations with his head held high. Deputy General who spurred his horse and followed beside him, slightly behind him by half a horse's length. In terms of rank, both of them were secondary class 5th rank. In terms of experience, Deputy General, who was much more experienced than Tang Ming, the newly appointed Deputy General, but who asked Tang Ming to have an uncle who was the Grand Marshal of the world's armed forces. Tang Ming himself was also brave enough. In just a few days, he had been promoted from a lieutenant to a deputy general. Perhaps he would be able to become a proper general soon. Deputy general who didn't have the guts to offend this little master. "How are those people standing?" Tang Ming stopped his horse and pointed at the square formation at the back. "They're so crooked that they can't even stand? What use does the military camp have for this kind of trash?" Deputy General, who broke out in cold sweat. That upright posture wasn't enough? He was picking on them. That was true. That square formation was made up of the original Gu clan army. Old Marquis Gu didn't get along with the Grand Marshal of the world's armed forces in the early years. After the Gu clan army was incorporated under his command, some generals treated them like vegetables and embarrassed the Gu clan army quite a bit. As for Tang Ming, after entering the camp, he didn't hide his suppression of the Gu clan army at all. For example, right now Tang Ming said coldly, "Those at the side disperse. Leave that group of people behind and continue to stand there until I'm satisfied." Deputy General, who waved his hand at the personal guard beside him. "Why aren't you going?" "Yes." The personal guard conveyed Tang Ming's order. Everyone was used to this. They looked at those people sympathetically and went to the cafeteria to eat breakfast. Those people stood there for the whole morning. They didn't eat breakfast even when the competition started, but it was impossible to let them eat now. Even if they were let go, the cafeteria would have been cleaned up long ago. For some reason, Deputy General Hu felt that Tang Ming was being too harsh today. Although he had made things difficult for them in the past, he wouldn't let them starve on such an important day. If this were to happen on the battlefield, wouldn't it be the same as letting the soldiers go into battle with empty stomachs? Deputy General Hu was puzzled, but he didn't dare to say anything. There were 2 arenas in the military camp, one big and one small. The big arena was usually used for the annual martial arts competition. Today, they were using a small arena. Martial arts competitions had always been a tradition in the military camp. The original intention was to encourage morale and select talents. Every time the champion was awarded 10 taels of silver. Most of the people in the military camp were commoners. Everyone was interested in money, but they were even more interested in being chosen by the generals. At that time, Deputy General, who had taken a fancy to Xuan Ningxiang's brother-in-law, Zhou Erzwang, because Zhou Erzwang had defeated a very powerful corporal in the arena. The arena began. Tang Ming, Deputy General Hu, and a few other generals from Tiger Mountain Barracks sat on the temporary viewing platform across from them. However, to their surprise, the first person to go up was Gu Chongqing. Gu Chongqing was dressed in dark brocade robes and held the Qing Xianlong sword in his hand. He stood on the arena and under the blue dome of heaven. The place where Tang Ming had been beaten by Gu Chongqing was still aching faintly. He narrowed his eyes coldly. What's going on? Why is Commandant Gu going up? That's right. Why did Gu Chongqing come to fight in the arena? Why would he take a fancy to an arena of this level? Actually, in the early days of the arena, the generals had always been the first to fight. After the generals had fought, the arena was handed over to the rest of the soldiers. Later on, the military camp's official style prevailed. The generals with official ranks felt that winning wasn't something to be proud of, but losing was shameful. Gradually, they withdrew from the arena. This was Gu Chongqing's first time in the arena. He faced the wind, his hair bound by a jade crown, his robes flapping. His aura was like a rainbow. For a long time, no one dared to go up. Gu Chongqing then began to call out names. He was a commandant. As long as he didn't call out anyone with a higher rank than himself, no one could refuse. The first name he called out was Fu Peng. He was one of Tang Ming's subordinates. Gu Chongqing didn't give Tang Ming any face and knocked him out of the arena with a single move. After that, Gu Chongqing called out another 17 or 18 people in one go. They were all Tang Ming's subordinates, and they were all defeated with a single move. Tang Ming's fists were clenched tightly. If he still couldn't tell that Gu Chongqing was deliberately targeting him, then it wouldn't make sense. Was Gu Chongqing fighting for justice for the Gu clan army? Or was he avenging his stepbrother? Gu Chongqing knocked down another one of Tang Ming's subordinates. He didn't even use his weapon. He looked at Tang Ming and didn't hide the provocation in his eyes. Are these the soldiers that Deputy General Tang brought out? They're just SOO. Provocation was definitely effective on Tang Ming, especially in front of all the soldiers. He, Tang Ming, couldn't afford to lose face like this. Tang Ming looked coldly at Gu Chongqing. He grabbed the sword on the table and leaped up, landing firmly on the arena. Everyone was stunned. It couldn't be, right? What day was it today? The Tang clan's little overlord was going to go up against the cold-faced Hades? Was it really that exciting? The relationship between Gu Chongqing and Tang Ming had never been harmonious, but this was the first time that they were going up against each other in public. Tang Ming had actually provoked Gu Chongqing countless times, but Gu Chongqing had always chosen to ignore him. Everyone thought that the two of them couldn't go up against each other. It seems that it was Commandant Gu who provoked Deputy General Tang first. That's right. What's wrong with him? I don't know. His gaze is so scary. Everyone could tell that Gu Chongqing was acting strangely today. He had always been a cold-faced Hades in the military camp, but he wasn't rash or provocative, let alone now when he was shrouded in a huge killing intent. This Commandant Gu was really too scary. Tang Ming chuckled. Admit it. You're actually jealous of me. You're jealous that I've become a deputy general and can ride on your head. What do you mean by avenging your stepbrother? I've thought about it. You, Gu Chongqing, aren't such a brotherly person. Gu Chongqing didn't waste time talking nonsense with him. He tossed out his sword and pulled it out in the air. With a kick to the scabbard sped toward Tang Ming. Tang Ming's expression changed, and he abruptly turned his body sideways. The scabbard flew past his face and stabbed firmly into the wall behind the arena. That wall was made of stone. How much strength did one need to be able to stab such a blunt scabbard in? Tang Ming's gaze returned to Gu Chongqing, and a bad premonition surged from the bottom of his heart. He had long known that Gu Chongqing had hidden his strength, but he didn't know exactly how much. He had passed the 12th stage of the 18 bronze men array, while Gu Chongqing had passed the 13th stage. But the strength of that move just now was at least above the 15th stage. Tang Ming suddenly regretted going up into the arena. However, it was too late now. There were so many people watching him. He couldn't surrender, and he couldn't lose. Tang Ming also pulled out his scabbard and threw it back to his subordinate. He then slashed out toward Gu Chongqing. The old marquee weapon was a 9-section whip. Therefore, Gu Chongqing was best at using whips. However, he didn't like using 9-section whips. Seeing that Tang Ming's sword was coming toward him, Gu Chongqing didn't even dodge. Had this person been scared silly by his sword chi? Just as this thought flashed through Tang Ming's mind, Tang Ming was struck by Gu Chongqing's sword. Tang Ming was stunned. He didn't even see how Gu Chongqing had attacked. That sword slashed through Tang Ming's armor and left a gash on the right side of his abdomen. Blood spurted out with a swoosh. Everyone was stunned. Although swords and sabers had no eyes, wasn't this attack a little too fast and vicious? Tang Ming covered his wound in disbelief and retreated a few steps. He looked at the blood on his wound and gritted his teeth, saying, Gu Chongqing, you're courting death. A cold glint appeared in Gu Chongqing's eyes. I've said it before. Don't have any ideas about him. I'll kill you. I won't kill you secretly. I'll beat you up until you're looking for your teeth all over the floor. I'll trample you under my feet and then kill you. Tang Ming suddenly realized that Gu Chongqing was serious. He seemed to understand why Gu Chongqing had done this. Gu Chongqing was humiliating him. Because he had humiliated Gu Yan, Gu Chongqing was going to let him have a taste of what he had done 10 times, 100 times over. Tang Ming clenched his fists. You're crazy. Aren't you afraid that you'll pay for it with your life? Gu Chongqing used his actions to tell him whether he was afraid or not. He slashed out with his sword again and slashed Tang Ming's right abdomen. The third slash pierced Tang Ming's left arm. The fourth slash injured Tang Ming's left leg. The fifth slash from the moment Tang Ming started to attack. He hadn't won against Gu Chongqing in a single move. On the other hand, Gu Chongqing's every slash caused Tang Ming to bleed. This wasn't a martial arts competition. It was a one-sided suppression. Tang Ming, the son of heaven, the second most powerful expert in the military camp, was actually so weak? Stop. Deputy General who couldn't stand it anymore. If he continued to hit Tang Ming, he'd lose his life. However, not only did Gu Chongqing stop, he even pierced his sword toward Tang Ming's heart. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Tang Ming was so weak that he couldn't move. He was just like Gu Yan, who couldn't move last night. He had become a lamb for others to do whatever they wanted to him. All the blood drained from his face. To a general, being abused like this in the arena was no different from an ordinary person being pinned down and played with. He had a taste of Gu Yan's despair and humiliation. In the blink of an eye, a strong gust of wind blew over and shook Tang Ming away from Gu Chongqing's sword. Tang Ming crashed into the wall and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he had managed to avoid a fatal blow. A tall and powerful figure landed in the arena, shielding Tang Ming behind him. When Tang Ming saw who it was, he crawled over and hugged the other party's leg. "Uncle, he wants to kill me." Tang Yueshan's cold gaze landed on Gu Changqing's face. "Doesn't Commandant Gu know the rules of a martial arts competition? You can't kill anyone." "Is he even human?" Gu Changqing asked coldly. Tang Ming glanced at his uncle guiltily. However, Tang Yueshan didn't look at him. He punished the old subordinates of the Gu clan. He was indeed too harsh. "However, if you want to take his life because of this, I'm afraid you'll be the one who went overboard." Gu Changqing didn't explain. This was good too. He could keep Gu Yan's secret. Tang Yueshan snorted coldly. "Then why don't I exchange a few blows with you?" Tang Yueshan was famous for his protective nature. This was why almost no one in the capital dared to provoke Tang Ming. Even if they were humiliated by Tang Ming, they could only swallow their anger. Tang Ming looked at Gu Changqing with deep hatred. A look of vengeance flashed across his face. "Uncle, kill him, kill him, kill him and avenge me." Tang Yueshan naturally couldn't kill Gu Changqing in front of the entire military camp. However, it would be easy for him to make Gu Changqing suffer a little. However, just as he was about to make his move, a voice as loud as a bell rang out. "Wait." Gu Changqing frowned. Deputy General Hu and the others turned to look. The old Marquis? Marquis Xianping followed behind the old Marquis. The old Marquis had retired and no longer held any official position. However, Marquis Xianping was still the great general of the state. Other than Tang Yueshan, everyone had to bow to him. Tang Yueshan's position was higher than his, but his status was inferior. Marquis Xianping was a first-rank marquis, a relative of the emperor. Tang Yueshan reluctantly made a fist and palm salute. It was a very perfunctory salute. Marquis Xianping didn't mind. He smiled faintly and said, "Long time no see. How are you, Lord Tang?" Tang Yueshan didn't have a good relationship with the old Marquis, nor did he have a good relationship with Marquis Xianping. The former had a grudge against him, while the latter, except for their different standpoints, it was purely because Marquis Xianping was too good at irritating people. Tang Yueshan and Marquis Xianping were the same age, but when they stood next to each other, it was as if they were a generation apart. Marquis Xianping hid his hands in his sleeves and looked at Tang Yueshan's round belly with a faint smile. "It seems that Lord Tang has been eating a lot lately. Is the salary of the Supreme Marshal too high? You're already a Supreme Marshal. Don't frown all the time. Look at you. You have more wrinkles." Tang Yueshan was furious. What did it mean to touch the pot that didn't boil? This was it. Speaking of which, he was wronged. When he was young, Shi used to be a handsome man, but now he was fat and looked like a middle-aged greasy uncle. Marquis Xianping looked like this 20 years ago, and 20 years later, he still looked like this. How infuriating. If it were someone else who insulted him like this, he could still say, "What's the point of being a handsome man? Do you know martial arts? Can you fight? Can you go to the battlefield and kill the enemy?" But Marquis Xianping couldn't say that. Marquis Xianping's arrival changed the atmosphere. Marquis Xianping took away a lot of Tang Yueshan's hatred for Gu Changqing. When the old Marquis proposed to take Gu Changqing back to the mansion for strict discipline, Tang Yueshan agreed without hesitation. Of course, it was also because Tang Ming's injuries were too serious, and he fainted from excessive blood loss. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find online. https://www.zhbqg.com/8964-_8964-28266/112563408. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu Mobile Reading Website. MZHHBQG. Com. Chapter 279. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with a deeper meaning that can't be found online are all available here. Malicious wounding in an official martial arts competition would be dealt with according to military regulations, especially when Gu Chongqing was a commandant. What would the soldiers think if a commandant took the lead in doing such a thing? This was the most irrational Gu Chongqing had ever been. At least, that was what the old duke thought. However, the old duke couldn't reprimand Gu Chongqing in front of outsiders. He gave Gu Chongqing a dark look and said, "Come down now." Gu Chongqing slowly walked to the wall and pulled out the scabbard that was deeply embedded in it. Tang Yueshan followed his movements and saw this scene. He couldn't help but frown. He was only in his early 20s, but he already had such profound martial arts. After Gu Chongqing took the scabbard, everyone thought that he would obediently leave with the old duke. Something strange happened at this moment. Tang Yueshan had just helped Tang Ming, who was covered in blood, sit up and was about to carry him down when a sharp sword light flashed. Everything had happened so quickly that no one could see what had happened clearly. The unconscious Tang Ming was woken up by the pain. Accompanied by his agonizing cry, one of his arms flew off. Blood splattered on Tang Yueshan's face. Tang Yueshan was stunned. In the next second, Tang Yueshan came to his senses and hit Gu Chongqing with his palm. The vigorous internal energy was so substantial that it was hard to resist. It sent Gu Chongqing flying out of the arena. This scene simply stunned everyone. Even the Marquis did not expect his own grandson to do such a thing. Marquis Xianping raised his eyebrows. "Oh, your grandson has guts." The old duke glared at Marquis Xianping. Tang Ming wailed incessantly. Tang Yueshan went berserk. He hit Tang Ming's acupoints and flew toward Gu Chongqing with bloodshot eyes. He wanted to kill Gu Chongqing. Gu Chongqing had already fallen to the ground after being struck by the palm. He felt a sharp pain in his chest, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The old duke's expression changed. He quickly stepped in front of Gu Chongqing and raised his hand to block Tang Yueshan's attack. Tang Yueshan's palm strike was full of murderous intent. The old Marquis was forced to take a few steps back, and his breath was in a mess. It was not hard to imagine how serious the consequences would be if Gu Chongqing was hit. Tang Yueshan was enraged. How dare he do this in front of me? If I don't kill him today, I won't be able to vent my anger. Get out of my way. Otherwise, I'll kill you too. Of course, the old duke knew that Tang Yueshan was not trying to scare him. Tang Yueshan had no children, and Tang Ming was his only nephew. Tang Ming was the apple of his eye since he was young. He was no different from his own son. Right now, one of Tang Ming's arms had been crippled by Gu Chongqing right in front of him. How could he possibly take this lying down? Marquis Xianping slowly opened his mouth. "Lord Tang, this is the military camp. It's not good for you to kill someone here, is it?" Yes, Gu Chongqing had violated military discipline. However, if Tang Yueshan killed Gu Chongqing, then he would be in the same situation as Gu Chongqing. He had just been conferred the title of Supreme Marshal of the military forces. Many eyes were on him. He could use his authority to bend the law for personal gain, but he could not kill a marquis's heir in public. Tang Yueshan clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. He looked murderously at Gu Chongqing and said through gritted teeth, "Men, take Commandant Gu to the torture chamber. I'll judge him personally later." "Yes, sir." 2 guards took away Gu Chongqing's sword and took him to the torture chamber in the camp. Tang Yueshan left with the unconscious Tang Ming. When he brushed shoulders with the old Marquis, he said coldly, "He hurt Ming. I won't let him off." The old Marquis cupped his hands in salute. "I won't let anyone wrong my grandson either." He was telling Tang Yueshan that he could forget about tampering with the interrogation process. After Tang Yueshan left, the old Marquis turned to look at Marquis Xianping. He no longer had an official position and could not interfere with military matters. Marquis Xianping waved his hand. I know. I'll be there during the interrogation. However, you'd better find out if Commandant Gu has any difficulties. The old Marquis replied, I will. After a while, Marquis Xianping also left. The old Marquis thought for a moment, then turned and went to the torture chamber. The torture chamber in the military camp was not really a prison. It was more like a dark room. There was nothing inside except for a straw mat. Marquis Xianping greeted the guards of the torture chamber and allowed them to visit Gu Changqing. The old Marquis successfully entered the torture chamber. Tang Ming was a proud son of heaven in the military camp. Wasn't Gu Changqing the same? He was even more outstanding than Tang Ming, more law-abiding, and more respectable. But today, this person who had never made a mistake had actually been convicted and locked up in the torture chamber. The old Marquis's feelings were very complicated. Kneel, the old Marquis said. Gu Changqing lifted the hem of his robe and knelt down expressionlessly. Gu Changqing had always been like this. He had never had a warm personality. But for some reason, the old Marquis felt that after returning to the capital, there was an invisible barrier and distance between him and Gu Changqing. Even kneeling seemed to give off a sense of obedience, but in reality, there was a silent rebellion. The old Marquis frowned. His suspicious gaze swept up and down Gu Changqing's body. In the end, he still asked about the military camp. Why were you so impulsive? Who gave you the courage to harm Tang Ming in front of so many people? Just now, if Marquis Xianping and I hadn't stopped you, you would have been killed by Tang Yueshan. Gu Changqing didn't say anything. He only lowered his eyes, as if he was looking at the cold ground, or as if his eyes were empty. Tell me honestly, what was the reason? Did Tang Ming really mistreat the former Gu army? This was the grandson the old Marquis had raised single-handedly. The old Marquis knew what kind of character he had. Gu Changqing had an inseparable feeling for the Gu army. Even if he had never truly been in the Gu army, he had been influenced by what he saw and heard from a young age. He had long since considered himself and the Gu army as one. The old Marquis still remembered that when he had handed over military power and allowed the Gu army to fall into the hands of others, Gu Changqing had secretly wiped away tears in his room. At the time, Gu Changqing had only been a youth. When he had entered the Tiger Mountain barracks, the old Marquis had repeatedly warned him not to act on impulse. These past few years, Gu Changqing had always strictly adhered to his warnings. But today, he couldn't bear it anymore. Other people believed it, but the old Marquis didn't. There had to be another reason. The old Marquis asked again, Do you have a personal grudge with Tang Ming? Gu Changqing remained silent. The old Marquis became angry. He unbuckled the whip at his waist and unfurled it with a crack. The long tail of the whip, suffused with a cold light, fell to the ground, as if it could splash sparks. Your wings have hardened. You don't have any respect for your grandfather, do you? I'm asking you a question. Gu Changqing said indifferently, Grandfather, just take it that I have a personal grudge. What kind of words were these? What did he mean by, just take it that I have a personal grudge? The old Marquis gritted his teeth. Then tell me, what kind of personal grudge is it? Tang Ming didn't have a good reputation in the barracks. But as to how bad his reputation was and what kind of despicable things he had done, most people didn't know. Gu Changqing wouldn't say. When it came to Gu Yan's reputation, he wouldn't say a single word. The old Marquis was furious. You can't say it? Then you don't care about your actions and have no regard for military discipline. Do you believe that I won't punish you? With one lash, Gu Changqing's skin split open and his flesh lacerated. The old Marquis' gaze was like a knife. Do you know your wrongs? Gu Changqing's expression was indifferent. I don't know. The old Marquis lashed out again, directly causing Gu Changqing's old wound to bleed. Grandfather. Big brother. It was Gu Chengfeng and Gu Chenglin. Gu Chenglin was wearing a hat. As it turned out, when Gu Changqing went up to the arena and continuously beat down Tang Ming's men, his guards had sensed that something wasn't right. They hurried back to the manor to report to the old marquis. Unfortunately, the old marquis had gone out. Coincidentally, Qinghe Academy didn't have classes today. The two brothers were at home, so they rushed over to take a look first. The two of them rushed into the torture chamber and hugged the old marquis' arms, one on the left and one on the right. Gu Chengfeng said, "Grandfather, Big Brother's injuries have just recovered. Don't hit him anymore." Gu Chenglin nodded and said, "That's right, Grandfather. Big Brother isn't made of iron. You've been beating him every 3 days and beating him every 5 days. How are you going to let Big Brother live?" The old marquis was unable to restrain his anger. "Both of you, get out of my way. Otherwise, I'll beat both of you as well. Let's beat him then." Gu Chengfeng knelt down beside Gu Changqing. Gu Chenglin shrunk his neck. He was a little scared, but seeing that both his brothers were kneeling, he gritted his teeth and also knelt down beside his big brother. It was he who held his head with his hands. "My hair has just grown out. Grandfather, can you not hit my head?" The old marquis was speechless. In the end, the old marquis chased Gu Chengfeng and Gu Chenglin out. Outside the torture chamber, the two of them listened to the sounds of the lashes landing on Gu Changqing's body. They were so anxious that they spun around on the spot. After some time, the door of the torture chamber finally opened. The old marquis walked out with an ashen face. He still held the long whip in his hand. The veins on the back of his hand and on his forehead were bulging. It was clear that he had been serious just now. The two of them looked at the old marquis hesitantly. The old marquis didn't say a word and left with a sullen face. Only then did the two of them enter the torture chamber again. Gu Changqing lay on the straw mat, his body covered in whip marks. "Big brother." Gu Chenglin's eyes were red. He rushed over and helped Gu Changqing up. Gu Chengfeng looked deeply at his big brother and said to his third brother, "Go to the carriage and bring the medicine for wounds from the secret compartment." "Okay," Gu Chenglin replied in a choked voice. He wiped his tears and went out. There was no third person in the room. Gu Chengfeng felt some movement outside the torture chamber. There was someone holding the door, but it wasn't too close. He helped Gu Changqing sit on the straw mat with his back against the cold wall. Actually, he and Gu Chenglin had heard everything Grandfather and Big Brother said just now. Gu Chenglin had a simple personality and couldn't hear anything, but he felt that something was strange. Gu Chengfeng knelt down on one knee beside Gu Changqing and looked at Gu Changqing. "Big brother, you've changed. You weren't like this before. What happened between you and Grandfather?" On the way here, he and Gu Chenglin had heard about what happened in the military camp. He thought that his big brother was venting for the Gu family army. Thus, even though he felt that his big brother was a bit impulsive, he didn't suspect him. On the contrary, he felt that the relationship between Grandfather and Big Brother was a bit strange. Big Brother used to be very respectful to Grandfather. Whenever Grandfather asked, he would tell him everything he knew. But recently, his big brother and Grandfather were clearly less talkative. At first, he thought that his big brother had grown up and become more introverted. But today, it clearly wasn't the case. Was it his imagination? He always felt that Big Brother had some complaints about Grandfather. "Nothing," Gu Changqing said. Gu Chengfeng looked at him suspiciously. "Is there really nothing? Or are you complaining that Grandfather has been gone for so many years and left us in the manor without caring about us?" Gu Changqing closed his eyes and said, "I already said there's nothing. You talk so much. Have you finished memorizing your books?" Gu Chengfeng choked. Memorizing what books? He went to the academy to mess around. Okay? He wasn't in the mood to study. But even though he wasn't in the mood, his homework wasn't bad. He was very smart. If he wasn't born in the Marquis household and didn't have to inherit the family business, as the second son, who wasn't given high hopes, perhaps he would study diligently and become an official. He couldn't help with his big brother's matter for now. After Gu Chunlin brought the medicine and applied it on his big brother, he and Gu Chunlin returned to the Marquis household. He finished the homework assigned by the teacher and also finished Gu Chunglin's. He was about to rest when he saw a white pigeon land on his windowsill. This wasn't an ordinary white pigeon. His eyes moved and he walked over to pick up the white pigeon. He looked around and made sure that no one was around before he untied a note from the pigeon's leg. There was another mission tonight. After Gu Chunlin fell asleep, Gu Chungfeng changed into his night clothes and put on his mask. He quietly left the Marquis household. He received the mission through the 1,000-sound pavilion. The carrier pigeon was placed there after he raised it. The 1,000-sound pavilion didn't know his identity. The meeting place was a room on the second floor of the 1,000-sound pavilion. The other party seemed to have been waiting for a long time. He wore a mask, and the other party also wore a bamboo hat. Neither of them could see the other's appearance. "I've heard so much about you." The other party held a folding fan and smiled at Gu Chungfeng. His voice sounded like he was 70 or 80 years old, but the hand holding the folding fan was unusually young. Gu Chungfeng had been on missions for a few years and had seen all kinds of strange methods to hide one's identity. Changing one's voice was a small trick. Gu Chungfeng went straight to the point. "Say it, what do you want?" The other party smiled and first took out a purse from his chest and placed it on the table. He slowly pushed it in front of Gu Chungfeng. Gu Chungfeng opened the purse to take a look. Good guy, it was all gold. Gu Chungfeng pulled out the gold inside and suspiciously looked at the other party. "It seems like it's a powerful treasure." The other party laughed. "It's a person. My family's young master wants a person." In the middle of the night, to steal someone? Gu Chungfeng rubbed his chin. "So much gold. It can't be that you want me to steal someone from the imperial palace, right?" The other party's smile deepened. "It's not that difficult. It's just a normal young master." "Then is there a need for so much gold?" Gu Chungfeng wasn't stupid. "It's a bit expensive," the other party said, and took out a portrait from his wide sleeve. The moment he saw the portrait, Gu Chungfeng's expression froze. How could it be him? The other party smiled. "He is someone from the Marquis Ding and Manor. I believe that with your skills, it won't be hard to find him." Gu Chungfeng's tone was normal as he said, "What is there to steal from this person? You look like you can't even lift a finger." These words were completely illogical. Who would steal a young master to have him do heavy work? But the bamboo hat man did not investigate. He only smiled and said, "My family's young master likes him. Originally, he only liked him a little. Now that he was injured and the price was heavy, he wants him even more. Otherwise, wouldn't he have lost an arm for nothing?" Saying this, the bamboo hat man suddenly coughed and stopped. But in Gu Chungfeng's mind, two words almost instinctively popped out: arm loss and arm. That person is. Gu Chungfeng suddenly opened his eyes wide and clenched his fists. The bamboo hat man looked at the money pouch in Gu Chungfeng's hand and smiled. "This is only the down payment. After the matter is completed, you will pay 10 times the reward." This was the largest order Gu Chungfeng had received in the past few years. 10 times the reward. That was 1,000 taels. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't moved. But Gu Chungfeng was not perverted to the point of selling off someone from the Marquis Manor. He threw the money pouch on the table. "I can't accept this order. And I promise you, no one in the capital can accept it." The bamboo hat man bared his teeth in melancholy. "Is that so? Then that's really a pity. Can I ask why?" "This young master only steals things, not people. Goodbye," Gu Chungfeng said perfunctorily. He adjusted the mask on his face and left without looking back. After walking out of 1,000-sound pavilion, he stood in the cold wind and could not calm down for a long time. Was the financier Tang Ming? Tang Ming had taken a fancy to Gu Yen? Big Brother cut off Tang Ming's arm because of this? Young master. While Gu Chengfeng was deep in thought, a clerk from the Thousand Sound Pavilion walked out and said to him, "Just now, the pavilion master stopped another order and asked if you want to accept it. It's a calligraphy painting." This kind of work was not difficult for Gu Chengfeng. He was about to open his mouth to agree when he suddenly thought of something and fell silent. Young master. The clerk looked at him in confusion. Gu Chengfeng said, "Forget it. I have something to do tonight. I won't accept the order." Clerk. Ah. Yes. Gu Chengfeng returned to the manor as quickly as possible. He stayed in his room without taking off his night clothes and occasionally looked out the window. However, after waiting for a long time, there was no movement. He rubbed his chin. Not coming? Or, a flash of lightning flashed through his mind. His expression turned cold. He put on his mask, opened the door, and walked out. In the dead of the night, the solemn general's manor was brightly lit. Tang Ming's arm had been cut off by Gu Chongqing. Tang Yueshan had called over the best medical officers in the military camp. The medical officers spent a Herculean effort to stop Tang Ming's bleeding. "What about the arm?" Tang Yueshan asked, his veins bulging. "Can my nephew's arm be reattached?" The medical officers looked at each other. Medical Officer Wu, who was the leader, said in shame, in response to Lord Tang's words, "Please forgive us for our shallow medical skills. We are unable to treat your nephew's arm." Tang Yueshan said with a sullen face, "Why can't you treat it? Don't your medical books say something about grafting flowers on a tree?" Medical Officer Wu said, "It is indeed recorded in the ancient books. Unfortunately, no one has ever succeeded. It is said that there is a precedent in the Yen Kingdom, but that is just a rumor." Tang Yueshan would never go to the Yen Kingdom for a rumor. Even if he was willing, the Yen Kingdom was far away. It would be too late by the time he got there. Just as Tang Yueshan was in a terrible fix, another medical officer, surnamed Jiang, said, "Lord Tang, I know a medical hall." Tang Yueshan said excitedly, "Tell me, who is it?" Medical Officer Jiang said, "I wonder if Lord Tang has heard of the Miracle Hall?" Tang Yueshan shook his head. "No." Medical Officer Jiang thought for a moment and said, "Then, have you heard of the bellows incident in the Ministry of Works?" Tang Yueshan said in a low voice, "I have heard a little about it. What does it have to do with the Miracle Hall?" Imperial Physician Jiang said, "My lord, you may not know this, but the Miracle Hands Hall was one of the medical centers that were recruited by the Imperial Court to treat injuries. The medical skills of the doctors in the Miracle Hands Hall are far superior to other medical centers, and they have treated the most critically ill patients. Even a craftsman who almost died was saved." Tang Yueshan said hurriedly, "Then go and invite them here." At night, the steward of the Tang mansion came to the Miracle Hall. He entered the hall and shouted, "Call out the most skilled doctor here and ask him to come with me to the marshal's mansion immediately." The most skilled doctor in the Miracle Hall was Gu Jiao. Unfortunately, Gu Jiao was not here today. If it was in the past, shopkeeper Wang would have asked Dr. Song to go to the marshal's mansion. After all, they did not know who was the most skilled doctor. Dr. Song's medical skills were also very good. He was taught by Miss Gu. However, shopkeeper Wang could not stay calm when he heard the words marshal's mansion. "May I ask what illness is it?" he asked the steward. The steward did not hide it and said bluntly, "My young master's arm was cut off. Can it be cured?" Dr. Song could not cure it. Shopkeeper Wang was not sure if Miss Gu could cure it. After all, he had never seen Gu Jiao treat it. He hesitated for a moment and called Xiao Sanzi. "Go to Miss Gu's house." Xiao Sanzi went to buy Shui Alley. The person who opened the door for him was Gu Xiaoshun. "Xiaoshun, is your sister here?" Xiao Sanzi asked. Gu Xiaoshun said, "My sister is next door. Why are you looking for her?" Xiao Sanzi nodded. Then I'll go next door to find her." Gu Jiao had just finished giving Gu Yen a drip. When she heard that Xiao Sanzi had come, she tidied up her things and tucked in Gu Yan's quilt. She put down the curtain and said, "Come in." "Yes." Xiao Sanzi walked in. He did not look around or ask anything. He was very polite. Miss Gu, there is a guest in the clinic. He wants to ask you to go to the marshal's mansion. Can't Dr. Song go? Gu Jiao asked. Xiao Sanzi said embarrassedly, it's a patient from the marshal's mansion. I heard that his arm was cut off. Dr. Song does not know how to treat it. Gu Jiao's hand that was tidying up the curtain paused. Marshal's mansion? Which marshal's mansion? Xiao Sanzi said, there is only one marshal's mansion in the capital. It was the original Tang mansion. He looked around and whispered, Miss Gu, did you not hear the big news today? What news? Gu Jiao asked. Xiao Sanzi said, that something happened in the Tiger Mountain barracks. I heard that the nephew of the world's great marshal got into a fight with someone and was heavily injured. I didn't expect that his arm would be cut off. I don't know who is so daring. Who else could it be? Gu Jiao narrowed her eyes slightly. A dark light flashed in her eyes. Okay, I'll go. That's great. Then I'll wait for you in the carriage, Xiao Sanzi said with a smile and slipped out in a flash. Gu Jiao smiled evilly. She took out her little notebook and wrote Tang Ming's name on it with a charcoal pencil. Gu Jiao carried a small basket on her back and sat in Xiao Sanzi's carriage to go to the Miracle Hall. When he saw that the visitor was a female physician, the Tang Mansion's housekeeper looked at her with disdain. Why is she a female physician? Xiao Sanzi refuted. She's the most skilled physician in the Miracle Hall. She's also the owner of the Miracle Hall. She's not a female physician. She's a female physician. She treated the emperor's illness? Humph. The Tang Mansion's housekeeper was still somewhat disdainful. Gu Jiao said calmly, if even I can't treat your young master's injury, then there's probably no physician in the world who can. Xiao Sanzi straightened his back. That's right. The Tang Mansion's housekeeper expected that a small clinic wouldn't have the guts to fool the marshal's mansion. After frowning, he brought Gu Jiao to the marshal's mansion. Tang Yueshan was unhappy to see that the visitor was a female physician. However, Dr. Zhang recognized Gu Jiao at a glance. This is the physician who was at the scene of the accident that day. Her medical skills are very good. She saved the most patients. Hearing Dr. Zhang's words, Tang Yueshan was slightly relieved. He glanced at Gu Jiao. Her face was damaged. However, she didn't show any signs of weakness. Instead, she was very calm and generous. However, he didn't know if it was his illusion, but the girl's eyes seemed to be a little excited. He must be overthinking. Why would she be excited about treating his nephew? She should be nervous. After all, he would be angry if she couldn't treat him. Tang Yueshan said seriously, you should have heard about my nephew's condition from the housekeeper. Can you treat him? Yes, said Gu Jiao. Tang Yueshan was stunned. So easy? Without hesitation? The consultation fee is not cheap, said Gu Jiao again. Tang Yueshan snorted. As long as you can cure my nephew, I can pay you however much you want. Gu Jiao raised a finger. 5,000 taels. Hiss. Tang Yueshan gasped and gritted his teeth. Fine. As long as you can cure him, forget 5,000 taels. Even 10,000 taels is not a problem. Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows. Then 10,000 taels. Tang Yueshan looked deeply at Gu Jiao. Come with me. Tang Yueshan brought Gu Jiao to Tang Ming's courtyard. The marshal's mansion was bigger than Marquis Ding An's mansion. The route was complicated. If someone didn't lead the way, even Gu Jiao, a secret agent from her previous life, couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't get lost. Along the way, Gu Jiao looked around. Tang Yueshan thought she had never been to such a big mansion before and didn't say anything. As soon as they entered Tang Ming's room, the strong smell of blood hit their nostrils. Gu Jiao's expression didn't change. She went forward to examine Tang Ming's wound and said to Tang Yueshan, I will operate on him in a while. You can wait outside. No way. Tang Yueshan said coldly, this marshal doesn't trust you. If you take advantage of this marshal's absence and do something to Ming, this marshal will regret it. This old man was quite cautious. Gu Jiao said, oh, as you wish. Tang Yueshan insisted on staying in the room. He saw Gu Jiao open a small medicine box and put on a pair of gloves for herself. She then took out a strange needle and inserted it into Tang Ming's arm. On the other end of the needle was a strange bottle of medicine. Gu Jiao began to stitch up Tang Ming's wound. The entire process was closely monitored by Tang Yueshan. Tang Yueshan wasn't like Gu Qingfeng, an inexperienced youth. He had been on the battlefield, stepped on bones, and dug up meat from piles of corpses to eat. He could completely withstand this kind of bloody scene. However, Gu Jiao's calmness surprised Tang Yueshan. He had killed before, so he wasn't afraid. How could a girl be so calm? It couldn't be that she had killed before. The operation went smoothly. Can he still hold a sword in the future? Tang Yueshan asked. Gu Jiao said, I don't know. I only treat injuries, not martial arts. Tang Yueshan didn't have much hope in his heart. It wasn't easy to reattach this arm. If he really couldn't hold a sword, it didn't matter. He still had another arm. If worst came to worst, he could practice with his left hand from now on. Tang Yueshan asked the housekeeper to withdraw some money from the accounts room to Gu Jiao. After Gu Jiao took the money, she immediately left the marshal's mansion. However, she didn't go back. Instead, she changed into a small black outfit and put on a beautiful peacock plume mask. She quietly sneaked back to the marshal's mansion. She had memorized the way to the marshal's mansion. Tang Ming, she was here. The moon was dark and the wind was strong. After an entire day of chaos, the marshal's mansion finally returned to its usual tranquility. Tang Ming's condition was stable. Tang Yueshan felt relieved and returned to his own courtyard, leaving 2 shadow guards to guard it. The 2 shadow guards solemnly stood guard outside Tang Ming's door. Suddenly, a small black figure descended from the sky. With a whoosh, an anesthetic needle in each hand pierced into the bodies of the 2 shadow guards. The shadow guards' bodies went limp and they fell to the ground. Gu Jiao pushed open the door and slowly walked in. A simple and elegant carriage passed over the cold doorsill. She came to Tang Ming's bedside and looked at him with interest, as if she was looking at a prey that was about to enter the net. The anesthetic Tang Ming had received during the operation was gradually wearing off. However, Gu Jiao had added some other things to it, so he shouldn't be able to move at this time. However, his sense of pain was more sensitive than ever. As expected, Tang Ming was starting to feel pain. The sword wounds on his body and the wound on his arm all fought to wake him up. He opened his eyes with cold sweat. Then, he saw a small ghostly figure in front of the bed. The small figure was wearing a peacock plume mask. There was a strange and frightening feeling to it. Tang Ming jumped in fright. Someone, he shouted loudly. However, he realized that he could only make gurgling sounds from his throat. The corners of Gu Jiao's lips curled up. Oh, the effects of the drug were pretty good. Even his vocal cords were numb. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels can be read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found online can be found here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896422826/112538262. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Mobile Reading Website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 280. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels can be read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found online can be found here. Gu Jiao looked at him with great interest. Her gaze lingered on him, as if she was comparing weights. How could you have touched my younger brother? Was it this one? Gu Jiao looked at his right hand. Don't worry, she had just stitched up this arm. She won't remove it. Gu Jiao looked at his left hand again. Tang Ming's heart skipped a beat. In order to let him sleep peacefully, the room was lit with incense, and the oil lamp was extinguished. However, the moonlight shone through the window lattice and spread all the way to his bed. The other party's back was against the light, but there was a strange light flashing in his dark eyes. Tang Ming felt that he might have seen a ghost. After all, the marshal's residence was heavily guarded. It was impossible for an assassin to sneak in. Even if they did, there were still secret guards left behind by his uncle standing outside the door. They couldn't have been taken care of as well. Was he really seeing a ghost? Or was he dreaming? Didn't they say that people couldn't feel pain in their dreams? He was going to die from the pain. The place where Gu Chongqing had cut him with his sword hurt, and the place where his arm had been connected hurt even more. It was as if someone had sprinkled salt and applied spicy oil. It was so painful that cold sweat broke out all over his body. What Tang Ming didn't know was that this was just the beginning. Gu Jiao took out a pair of gloves from her chest and flicked them lightly. Tang Ming's body instinctively trembled, and a strange chill surged up his spine. The mask only covered half of Gu Jiao's face. Tang Ming could see her delicate chin and slightly curled lips. Tang Ming didn't know whether this person was a man or a woman, but his smile made his scalp tingle. "What are you doing?" Gu Jiao's lips curled up evilly. She put on her gloves and gently tapped his left hand. The cold temperature of her fingertips passed through the gloves and onto Tang Ming's skin. Tang Ming shivered. The next second, Tang Ming felt the seemingly gentle fingers suddenly increase in strength. With a crack, his wrist was fractured. Under the effects of the medicine, Tang Ming felt as if he had been fiercely slashed by someone. He opened his mouth to shout, but he could only shout in his mind. Gu Jiao's fingertips traced along his broken wrist. Her movements were very gentle, and her eyes were filled with enjoyment, if one ignored the cracking sounds under her fingertips. Tang Ming was in so much pain that he almost fainted. What kind of pervert was this? He actually broke his arm inch by inch. This level of pain was enough to make an expert from the Imperial Palace faint, but Gu Jiao had given him a very expensive medicine. He would be able to stay awake and feel pain clearly. Tang Ming's entire face was contorted in pain. He looked at Gu Jiao with hatred. "I'll kill you. I'll kill you." "Oh." Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows and lifted her hand from his shattered left arm. Tang Ming thought that his aura had scared off the other party, but unexpectedly, the other party suddenly pressed her hand on his left leg. Tang Ming panicked. What was this little pervert trying to do? "Let go of him. Don't touch his leg." Gu Jiao's lips curled up slightly. Her knuckles gently knocked on his knee. With a crack, his knee shattered. Tang Ming was in so much pain that tears were coming out. This state of being unable to do anything but lie on the bed and be at the mercy of others was much more tragic than Gu Yan's state back then. At least Gu Yan could still speak, but he couldn't even shout. Tang Ming finally knew fear. He was a martial arts practitioner, and his courage was much stronger than that of ordinary people. This was also why he could brace himself to fight with Gu Chongqing in the arena. He was afraid of Gu Chongqing's martial arts, but more than that, he was angry and jealous. He was jealous that Gu Chongqing was clearly 2 years younger than him, but had a stronger martial arts talent than him. However, the masked person in front of him gave him a completely different feeling. Whatever anger, whatever jealousy, whatever unwillingness and anger, they were all replaced by fear that came from the depths of his bones. He had finally surrendered. Big drops of tears fell from his eyes. He looked at her pleadingly, even forgetting to ask who she was and why she was treating him this way. He only begged her to let him go. Gu Jiao looked at him gently. "Then, have you let my Yin go?" Tang Ming's tears streamed down his face, and his whole body trembled. "I beg you, let me go, let me go." Gu Jiao's lips curled up. Her fingertips gently pressed on his other knee. With a crack, it shattered as well. Even with the effects of the medicine, Tang Ming still fainted from the pain. Gu Jiao wasn't in a hurry. She sat patiently at the head of the bed and waited. It didn't take long. After all, the medicine from the research institute was all good medicine. Tang Ming slowly woke up. His face was pale, and his whole body was drenched in cold sweat. He saw that the demon hadn't left yet, and his whole body started to tremble uncontrollably once again. He was no longer the mighty warrior of the grasslands. All of his courage and guts had been destroyed by the person in front of him. He looked at her timidly. Tears filled his eyes, and he was filled with fear and despair. Gu Jiao ignored his despair. She wasn't a good person. She had never been one. She was willing to go to hell after death and be hacked into pieces. However, she would take revenge for the hatred in this life. Gu Jiao smiled gently. "You can speak now." Tang Ming moved his mouth and let out a low ah. He could finally speak, but it was very weak. Gu Jiao took out a syringe from her pocket. In the dark night, Tang Ming couldn't see what it was clearly. He could only vaguely feel a cold light flashing past. What are you going to do?" he asked fearfully. Gu Jiao's gaze fell on his waistband. Chemical castration. Tang Ming didn't understand what he meant by melt snow or not, but he understood the last two words. His expression suddenly changed. No? Oh, okay. Gu Jiao quietly put the syringe back into her pocket. The next second, she took out a scalpel and said naughtily, "Physical castration then." Tang Ming was speechless. Tang Yueshan went to sleep after returning to the courtyard. He had experienced a stressful day and was indeed exhausted. Not long after, he fell asleep. In the middle of the night, he was suddenly awakened by a nightmare and sat up. He must have forgotten to close the window. At this moment, the night wind blew open the window and made it creak and sway. Tang Yueshan couldn't remember what he had dreamed of. In short, his heart was beating very fast. He frowned and wanted to check on Tang Ming's condition. As soon as he lifted the blanket, he heard a shrill scream. The voice wasn't loud, and it sounded like it came through the heavy blanket. Tang Yueshan's hearing was excellent. Otherwise, he wouldn't have heard it. Ming. His expression changed. He didn't even bother to put on his shoes and ran out barefooted. He quickly arrived at Tang Ming's courtyard and saw the two secret guards lying on the ground. His heart sank. Then, he saw a small figure dashing out of Tang Ming's backyard. "Guards, there's an assassin," he shouted. The guards patrolling nearby were alerted and rushed over. They looked in the direction Gu Jiao had gone and chased after her. Tang Yueshan ran into the house as fast as he could. When he saw Tang Ming lying in a pool of blood and dying, he let out a violent and heartbroken cry. Gu Jiao didn't know Qigong and couldn't outrun this group of masters. Tang Yueshan woke up at the right time. If he woke up a little later, she would have succeeded. But one was still not bad. The moment Gu Jiao leaped onto the wall, the masters of the marshal's mansion drew their bows and shot a whole row of arrows at Gu Jiao. Just as Gu Jiao was about to be shot into a sieve, a dark shadow jumped up from outside the wall and grabbed Gu Jiao's waist. He used a dart to deflect the arrows and stopped Gu Jiao's body from landing lightly on the horse's back. "Giddy up." He pulled on the reins, and the horse galloped away. The horse galloped for dozens of miles in the dark night before stopping. At this time, they arrived at the shore of a lake. This was a lake for people to enjoy and play. The scenery was pleasant with green mountains and clear waters. During the day, people would ride pleasure boats or go boating on the lake. The blue waves rippled, and the lake was beautiful. At this time, it was late at night. Other than a few empty pleasure boats that had long gone to sleep, there was nothing else. Under the towering sky, it seemed like there were only two people and one horse left. "Did you shake them off?" Gu Jiao sat in front of him and asked. "Yes, I shook them off," he answered. They had already shaken them off, but for the sake of caution, they still ran a little more. Gu Jiao lifted her long legs and slid down from the saddle. She closed her eyes and enjoyed the moist lake breeze for a while. She asked him, "Why are you here?" Gu Chengfeng also dismounted and led the horse to the grass by the shore. He watched the horse graze as he answered, "Yes, why am I here? I was just wandering around and bumped into you. Can't I? Oh. Gu Jiao replied with an oh. She walked across the grass and sat down on a stone step by the shore. She picked up a broken tile and threw it toward the lake. The tile flew over the water 7 or 8 times before it fell into the water. Gu Jiao was not satisfied. She sighed. You've regressed. The corner of Gu Qingfeng's mouth twitched. With your thin arms, it's already amazing that you can fly 7 or 8 times, okay? Gu Qingfeng saw that the horse was eating happily and did not bother with it. He walked to Gu Jiao's side and also found a small tile, planning to show her the strength of a man. In the end, pa, it fell into the water 3 times. Gu Qingfeng was embarrassed. Ha. Gu Jiao laughed. She had a strange sense of humor. When everyone was laughing, she might not find it funny, but sometimes a very small thing would make her laugh like a child. It was the first time Gu Qingfeng saw her laugh like this. Childish. Gu Qingfeng rolled his eyes and sat down on the step beside her. Gu Jiao picked up another tile and threw it into the water. Gu Qingfeng hesitated for a moment, but still asked, "Why didn't you look for me?" Gu Jiao asked strangely, "Why should I look for you?" Gu Qingfeng snorted, "Don't you like to exploit me? It's such a dangerous thing. Why didn't you exploit me?" Gu Qingfeng was just casually muttering a few words, but after he finished, he suddenly fell silent. Because it was too dangerous, she didn't call him? So this girl actually had a little bit of conscience? Gu Jiao sighed. "Sai, you're so weak, I was afraid that you would drag me down." Gu Qingfeng. So why was he almost touched? She was clearly a heartless little girl. Also, what did she mean by weak? If it wasn't for him just now, she would have been shot into a sieve. Gu Jiao continued to play with the tile. He could see that she was in a good mood, so she must have succeeded. He just didn't know what she did to that guy. While he was thinking, Gu Jiao suddenly threw a brocade pouch into the river. She threw it too quickly, so Gu Qingfeng did not see it clearly, but from the sound of it falling, it seemed that there was something in the pouch. "What is that?" Gu Qingfeng asked. "You don't want to know," Gu Jiao said. Gu Qingfeng. Gu Qingfeng silently lit a candle for Tang Ming in his heart. Tang Ming deserved it. He could have provoked anyone, but why did he have to provoke her younger brother? She wasn't even this angry when he provoked her. At the mention of Tang Ming, Gu Qingfeng remembered something. Tonight, someone paid me a lot of money to kidnap Gu Yan. The backer seems to be Tang Ming. "It's not him," Gu Jiao said without hesitation. "How can you be so sure?" Gu Qingfeng asked. Gu Jiao said, "Tang Ming's injuries are serious and he's been receiving emergency treatment. He can't order anyone to do anything." Gu Qingfeng frowned. If it's not Tang Ming, then why do they have to act like it's Tang Ming? Are they trying to confuse the public? Or are they trying to use me to spread the news that Tang Ming is drooling over Gu Yan? Gu Jiao didn't say anything. As early as in her dream, when Royal Prince Anne's exam papers were switched, she faintly felt that there was an invisible power in the capital. In the past, that power had nothing to do with her, so she didn't pay it any attention. Now, however, it involved Gu Yan. Of course, this was only her guess. She didn't have any evidence to prove that this was the work of that power. Also, the other party might not be targeting Gu Yan. It was more like they were using Fei Shuang to ruin Tang Ming's reputation. Gu Yan would be implicated for no reason. The consequences of being implicated on a small scale would cause Gu Yan to be harmed, but this should not be within the scope of the other party's concern. On a large scale, it would increase the conflict between the Marshal's manor and Marquis Ding manor. Gu Qingfeng also thought of this point. The situation in the capital had always been very complicated, but recently, it seemed to have become even more complicated. However, the other party had missed one point. That was, Fei Shuang knew Gu Yan. She would not spread the news of Tang Ming and Gu Yan. "Gu Yan, is he all right?" Gu Qingfeng asked. Gu Jiao paused, then said, "He's fine. He was just a bit frightened." "Ah, girl." Gu Qingfeng thought of something and spoke again. "Who exactly are you? Where did you come from?" In any case, he did not believe that she was that little fool who had wandered among the commoners. Me. Gu Jiao rubbed the tile in her hand. It was rare that she did not avoid this topic. She pointed at the distant horizon. I came from there. There? Where? Gu Chengfeng followed the direction of her finger and only saw a vast expanse of starlight. Gu Jiao gazed at the expanse of starlight, very, very far away. I crossed time and space. I might have also crossed the universe. She had never said these words to anyone before. No one would believe her, and no one would understand. In reality, Gu Chengfeng did not understand either, but he believed her. Gu Chengfeng said, "Then how did you come here?" Gu Jiao held the tile in her hand and did not continue to play with water. Instead, she placed her other hand behind her head and lay down on the green grass. I also want to know how I came here. She had considered this question more than once. Was her arrival a theology or a science? Was it her soul that had transmigrated? Or was it the small medicine box from an advanced civilization that had torn through time and space and brought her brain waves here? Gu Chengfeng studied her expression and found that she was indeed confused. He thought to himself that there was someone who did not know how she came here. Could it be that she had been knocked unconscious and left here? Gu Chengfeng did not know how to respond. He looked at Gu Jiao lying on the grass and leisurely looking at the stars and could not help but mutter, "Isn't that beautiful?" "What about you?" Gu Jiao looked at the starry sky and spoke slowly. Gu Chengfeng was slightly stunned. "What about me?" Gu Jiao slowly exhaled. "Why did I have to be a little thief?" "That's not a little thief. It's a great thief. The number one thief in the capital." Gu Chengfeng exploded. Little thief, how unpleasant it was to hear. Gu Jiao pouted. "Then isn't that stealing?" Gu Chengfeng. He actually could not refute. He raised his eyebrows in satisfaction. But when he turned his head and saw that Gu Jiao had been looking at the starry sky and had not witnessed his awesomeness, he instantly lost his excitement. "I'm the second oldest." As he spoke, he also looked up at the starry sky. "I have a powerful older brother who has high hopes since I was young. As for me, I only need to play casually. After all, I don't have to worry about food and clothing when I grow up. In the future, when I get a share of the family business, I won't be able to spend it all in my lifetime." When he said this, his eyes were a little lonely. "What's wrong with that?" Gu Jiao asked. Gu Chengfeng smiled bitterly. Yes, what was wrong with that? Being a little playboy in the capital, ignorant and incompetent, and not having to shoulder anything, was something that many people dreamed of, but he was unwilling to accept it. He also wanted his grandfather to treat him harshly for once. But when he and his older brother did something wrong at the same time, his grandfather would always punish his older brother, as if it did not matter what he did. He had also tried to wake up early to practice martial arts with his older brother, but when he was late, his grandfather would never get angry. When it rained, his grandmother would not even let him go, saying, "Grandma's darling, why do you have to suffer?" Can you understand the feeling of others never having expectations of you? I'm living like a piece of trash. Gu Chengfeng's own mood became gloomy as he spoke. But when he turned his head, he found that the little girl who was supposed to be lying next to him as a listener had disappeared. His eyebrows jumped and he looked around. He saw that Gu Jiao had gone to the side of a horse and was looking for something in the small cloth bag hanging on the saddle. So thirsty. She found a water bag, pulled out the cork, and gulped down 2 mouthfuls. "Aya, why is it wine?" Gu Chengfeng wanted to remind her, but who told her to move so quickly? But this was not hard liquor, it was Thousand Sound Pavilion's pear blossom wine, so she would not get drunk. Just as his thoughts turned, Gu Jiao's eyes rolled back, and she passed out with a thud. Gu Chengfeng. The moon was dark and the wind was strong. The streets were as silent as snow. A certain someone was drunk and refused to ride a horse. So Gu Chengfeng had no choice but to carry her all the way from the lake to Jade Water Alley. Gu Chengfeng was someone who knew Qinggong, but he could not carry someone for dozens of miles. No matter how strong his Qinggong was, he would not be able to bear it. Okay? Not to mention, a certain someone was especially restless. Swish. A certain someone stretched out 2 hands and grabbed Gu Qingfeng's ears. I have a little donkey that I never ride. One day, I rode it to the market on a whim. I had a little whip in my hand. I was very proud of it. Giddy up, giddy up. Gu Qingfeng's ears were twisted out of shape. Ah. What kind of crazy person is this? Someone come and take her away. When Xiao Lulang heard the noise, he opened the door and came in front of the two. Gu Jiao had already pulled Gu Qingfeng's ears, and his hair was also twisted into a chicken's nest. Gu Qingfeng, who always cared about his image, and Fei Shuang, who even made a beautiful and coquettish mask, had never been in such a sorry state. Gu Qingfeng looked at Xiao Lulang, who suddenly appeared in front of him with an ashen face. Very good, someone saw him like this. Gu Qingfeng had stayed in the medical center for a long time, so Xiao Lulang knew him. He knew that he was the second young master of the Ho Fu, Gu Jiao's brother. Xiao Liulang's expression softened. You guys drank? He asked. Gu Qingfeng hurriedly said, No, she was the one who looked for water to drink, and mistakenly drank my pear blossom wine. She did not drink much, just a sip, who knew that her alcohol tolerance was so bad. Xiao Lulang looked at Gu Jiao, who was lying on Gu Qingfeng's back, and stretched out his arms. Give her to me. Gu Qingfeng looked at Xiao Lulang doubtfully. Can you do it? Xiao Liulang's mouth twitched and said expressionlessly, My hand is not crippled. Gu Qingfeng looked at him again, and saw that he was not using crutches, so he must have specially come out to carry her back. Moreover, he was dressed properly, and his expression was sober. It did not seem like he was woken up from his sleep, but rather like he had been waiting for this girl. Gu Qingfeng hesitated, but still gave Gu Jiao to Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lulang would have a hard time walking without crutches, but he still tightly held Gu Jiao in his arms. Gu Qingfeng was curious whether Xiao Lulang would throw her down, and stared at him as he entered the room. The moment he crossed the threshold, Gu Jiao suddenly hugged Xiao Liulang's neck and kissed him on the cheek. Gu Qingfeng wanted to poke his own eyes out. Why was he waiting here to watch? Was he looking for trouble? Xiao Lulang was actually also shocked by that kiss, but he knew that Gu Qingfeng had not gone far. He walked into the courtyard as usual and put her on the bed in the east room. He looked at her with shining eyes. Do you know who I am? Gu Jiao sat cross-legged on the bed and opened a pair of watery eyes and said very obediently, I know. She pretended to be awake and looked very much like an innocent little deer. Xiao Lulang couldn't take it anymore, and his chest swelled. He took a deep breath and asked her in a low voice, Then who am I? Gu Jiao, husband. Xiao Lulang, who is husband? Gu Jiao, Lulang Xiao Lulang. After she finished speaking, she fell asleep on the bed like a porcelain doll with her arms and legs spread out in front of her face. Xiao Lulang looked at her red little face, long eyelashes, and slightly opened bright red lips. His Adam's apple moved, and he quickly turned his face away. He stood up and was about to leave when Gu Jiao suddenly grabbed his sleeve, and in a daze, he fell towards her. He used his other hand to support his body, and weakly pressed on top of her. Her face was very close, and the smell of the pear blossom wine lingered at the tip of his nose. Xiao Liulang's eyelashes trembled slightly. He didn't know when, but her clothes were crooked, and half of her exquisite collarbone was exposed. His eyes only lightly swept over it, and he felt a rush of blood to his head. His breathing quickened. Gu Jiao grabbed his clothes with 2 fingers, closed her eyes, and muttered, I want a kiss. Kiss who? Jiao Jiao. Who wants to kiss Jiao Jiao? Lulang wants to kiss Jiao Jiao. Xiao Lulang took a deep breath again, and raised his hand to cover her eyes that were about to open. He bent down, and just as his lips were about to touch hers, he paused, tilted his head, and gently kissed the corner of her lips. The news of Tang Ming's arm being chopped off by Gu Changqing spread like wildfire in the capital. However, there was no specific news of Tang Ming's abuse that night. They only knew that an assassin had come to the manor, and the streets and alleys were filled with wanted posters from the government. Unfortunately, the wanted posters didn't even have a face. They only described the assassin's approximate height and figure, and it was a man. Thus, they couldn't find anything. After all, the assassin was a woman. No one suspected Gu Jiao. Of course, Tang Ming had suffered such a serious injury, but they didn't ask Gu Jiao to go to the marshal's manor to treat Tang Ming's injury. This wasn't strange. After all, Tang Ming's injury wasn't in the right place, and there were some things that outsiders couldn't know about. Tang Yueshan looked as if he had half his life taken away. In just one night, several strands of his hair had turned white. By the time the military camp's medical officer finished treating Tang Ming's injuries, it was already the morning of the next day. Tang Yueshan looked at Tang Ming, whose entire body was wrapped in bandages, and the blood vessels in his eyes looked like they were about to burst. "Don't worry, Ming. I'll find the murderer and avenge you," Tang Yueshan said coldly. He stroked Tang Ming's forehead lovingly and went to the military camp with a fierce look on his face. After entering the military camp, he went straight to the torture chamber. He believed that Gu Changqing had something to do with last night's incident. He was in a fit of anger, and his anger had drowned out his rationality. He had forgotten that Gu Changqing's figure didn't actually look like an assassin's. The assassin was smaller than Gu Changqing, but he couldn't rule out the possibility that he had seen wrongly in his panic. He kicked open the door of the torture chamber and angrily grabbed Gu Changqing's collar, pulling him up from the straw mat. "Was it you? Was it you last night?" Gu Changqing wasn't affected by Tang Yueshan's anger. He looked at him calmly. "Marshal, what are you talking about? Was it me?" Tang Yueshan gritted his teeth. "Don't play dumb with me. You broke into the marshal's residence last night and attacked Ming. It wasn't enough that you took his arm. You hurt him like that. Gu Changqing, you're so vicious." Gu Changqing looked at him coldly and didn't say anything else. There wasn't much hatred between Gu Changqing and Tang Yueshan. What happened to the Gu clan troops was caused by their different camps. It didn't have much to do with whether it was Tang Yueshan or not. The Gu clan troops might not have a good time if they fell into the hands of others. However, Gu Changqing and Tang Ming had an irreconcilable conflict. Tang Yueshan couldn't not protect Tang Ming, so he and Tang Yueshan had completely fallen out. Since that was the case, there was no need to pretend to be polite. The more nonchalant Gu Changqing was, the angrier Tang Yueshan became. "You don't want to admit it? Fine. Then don't blame me for being unreasonable. Guards, bring me the torture instruments." "What is Lord Tang doing?" Marquis Xian Pingho's unhurried voice slowly sounded outside the torture chamber. He was a person who didn't even go to the morning court, but he got up early for Gu Changqing. He was so sleepy. Marquis Xian Pingho yawned lazily, stood at the door, and looked inside with sleepy eyes. "It's not good to do such a cruel thing so early in the morning, is it?" Tang Yueshan looked at Marquis Xian Pingho with burning eyes. "Xiao Ji, you'd better not interfere in this matter." Marquis Xian Pingho was really sleepy. He raised his sleeve and yawned again. A beauty's yawn was also pleasing to the eye. He glanced at Tang Yueshan nonchalantly and said, "Unfortunately, I like to meddle in other people's affairs, especially since you've become the Grand Marshal of the world and taken away my military power. No matter how I think about it, I'm not happy about it. Well, I have to interfere." Tang Yueshan was speechless. Tang Yueshan suppressed his anger and said, "Do you think you can interfere? I'm the Marshal of the world who was personally appointed by the Empress Dowager. In the military camp, there are only official positions, no marquis. My official position is higher than yours. What right do you have to interfere in my affairs?" Marquis Xian Pingho was silent, as if he was seriously thinking about Tang Yueshan's words. "Well." He nodded and crooked his finger at Chang Jing. Chang Jing walked over and asked Marquis Xian Pingho, "Do you want to fight?" Marquis Xian Pingho frowned reproachfully and clicked his tongue at Chang Jing. He said to Chang Jing indifferently, "How can you fight so easily? Where did you learn it from? Is this what this marquis usually taught you?" As he reprimanded Chang Jing, he reached into the small pouch at her waist and took out 2 marbles. He then turned to Tang Yueshan and said, "Official Tang, how about this marquis make a bet with you? If you win, you can do whatever you want with Commandant Gu. If you lose, you won't torture Commandant Gu. Tang Yueshan said sarcastically. Oh, you're so cunning. Who wants to bet with you? Marquis Xian Pingho sighed. Hey, how can you say that? You and I have known each other for so many years. Even if we're not brothers, we're comrades. Why would I cheat you? I guarantee fairness. Unless you don't dare to bet. Tang Yueshan said coldly. Don't try to provoke me. Marquis Xian Pingho said. And my identity? Tang Yueshan was stunned. Marquis Xian Pingho looked at the marbles in his hand and smiled faintly. If I lose, I won't be Xiao Ji anymore. This was a great temptation. Although he was now the marshal of the world, his reputation in the capital was still not as good as Marquis Xian Pingho. But if Marquis Xian Pingho was no longer Marquis Xian Pingho, would he still be qualified to stand shoulder to shoulder with Tang Yueshan? Marquis Xian Pingho said earnestly, Anyway, you won't lose anything if you lose. Are you stupid not to bet? Tang Yueshan loosened his big fist and let go of Gu Chongqing. Okay, what do you want to bet? Digression. At the end of the month, the tickets were cleared. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet can be found here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/112509891. HTML Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 281. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find on the internet. Tang Yueshan calculated Marquis Xian Ping's strength in his mind. To be honest, he didn't fight with Marquis Xian Ping that many times. Even if he did, it was 20 years ago. Marquis Xian Ping's martial arts were slightly better than his, but Marquis Xian Ping's waist injury had not been completely healed. It would hurt every rainy day. Tang Yueshan was confident that Marquis Xian Ping was no match for him in martial arts. Was it a competition? Then Marquis Xian Ping was even less of a match for him. Although Tang Yueshan didn't know much about martial arts, he was still better than Marquis Xian Ping. Marquis Xian Ping was an ignorant and incompetent hooligan. Marquis Xian Ping sighed and said awkwardly, Lord Tang, you should know that I was injured before. Can I find someone to fight for me? It seemed that Marquis Xian Ping was really going to compete with him. Tang Yueshan glanced at the boy behind Marquis Xian Ping. He knew the boy. His name was Chongjing, a shadow guard. Tang Yueshan didn't know much about his background. Tang Yueshan couldn't feel the boy's aura at all. There were 2 possibilities. One was that the boy didn't know martial arts, and the other was that the boy's martial arts were better than his. There was no doubt that the boy was not the first. It was strange, but also not strange. It was not strange because Tang Yueshan was a man who led troops to war. He learned how to defend the enemy on the battlefield. His martial arts were very good, but not as good as a shadow guard. The strange thing was that the boy was so mysterious that no one in the capital had investigated his background. Tang Yueshan cared a lot about his reputation, but he was not the kind of person who would suffer for it. Provocation might work on him, but the real reason why he agreed to the bet was his own selfishness. He wanted to remove Xiao Ji's identity as Marquis Xian Ping. Therefore, he wouldn't let Chongjing fight for Marquis Xian Ping just to save face, even if Marquis Xian Ping would say that he had an unfair advantage because of his waist injury. I don't agree, Tang Yueshan said seriously. Sure enough, Marquis Xian Ping said, You're bullying me because of my waist injury? Aren't you afraid that people will laugh at you? Tang Yueshan snorted coldly. If you can afford it, then go. If you can't, then leave. Bet? Of course I have to bet. Am I the kind of person who can't afford to gamble? Marquis Xianping's shamelessness was well known in the circle. Even Tang Yueshan was afraid of losing, but Marquis Xianping was not. He was thick-skinned. Therefore, he could afford to gamble, and he could afford to lose. In a way, this was Marquis Xianping's unique reputation. Tang Yueshan was not afraid that he would go back on his word. All right, let's play then. Xianping opened his palm, revealing 2 jadeite marbles. Pick one. Tang Yueshan was taken aback. What? Marquis Xianping said, playing marbles. Tang Yueshan choked. You mean this? Ah, that's right. Marquis Xianping said matter-of-factly. What else do you think we're fighting? Fight. Tang Yueshan clenched his fists. He was so angry that the corners of his mouth were twitching. He was the one who said that if he could afford to gamble, then he could leave. Now he could not go back on his word. After all, it was not a matter of shame. He could not go back on his word. Tang Yueshan sucked in a breath of cold air. He had never thought that he would have to compete with others in this aspect at his age. Was there really nothing wrong with Marquis Xianping's brain? Did he really think that this was the case? Didn't he find it embarrassing? Sure, he used to play with marbles when Tang Yueshan was young, and he was good at it. Besides, martial artists were fast and accurate. Tang Yueshan was not afraid. Fine. I'll take this one, he answered impatiently and picked one of the marbles. Changjing's marbles looked similar, but each one was different. For example, Tang Yueshan's marbles were blue and white jadeite, while Marquis Xianping's marbles were jade and white jadeite. Marquis Xianping asked his men to dig 2 small holes in the ground. He and Tang Yueshan each took one. There were many ways to play with marbles. He asked Tang Yueshan to pick one, and Tang Yueshan picked the one that did not need to be done first. In addition to the marbles in their hands, they each took 10 marbles. Whoever hit the 10 marbles into the hole first would win. It sounded simple. However, he felt like an idiot to squat down in front of so many subordinates. Marquis Xianping was a handsome idiot. Everything he did was pleasing to the eye. Tang Yueshan could not bear to look at him squatting there. Tang Yueshan suddenly regretted. Why did he bet with this lunatic? Did he forget that this lunatic had never done anything normal? Marquis Xianping squatted on the ground and turned to look at Tang Yueshan. Are you ready, Lord Tang? At this moment, many people heard about the competition outside the torture chamber and came to watch. But just for this, Tang Yueshan was so embarrassed that he yelled in a bluff, "What are you looking at? Don't you need to practice?" The crowd left in a panic. Only the 2 lunatics, the 2 magnates, their henchmen, and Gu Chongqing were left. Gu Chongqing was not interested in this. He sat on the straw mat in the torture chamber with his back against the wall and closed his eyes to rest. Tang Yueshan cursed Marquis Xianping thousands of times in his heart. Then, accompanied by the sound of a gong, the day's marbles competition began. Tang Yueshan was full of confidence because Marquis Xianping had not practiced martial arts for a long time after his waist injury. He practiced day and night, so his control was better than Marquis Xianping. However, Marquis Xianping pressed Tang Yueshan's face to the ground and rubbed it. Before Tang Yueshan could throw a single marble, Marquis Xianping's 10 marbles all went into the hole. That's right, Marquis Xianping defeated 10 marbles with 1 marble. His technique was so decisive that he could be called a god. Tang Yueshan was stunned. You don't usually train but play marbles, do you? Marquis Xianping groaned and struggled to stand up. He looked down at the stunned Tang Yueshan and said, "You lost, Lord Tang." In order to trick Changjing into being his secret guard, he had practiced for a long time. If Tang Yueshan did not realize that he had been set up by Marquis Xianping, he would not be able to explain himself. But it was useless even if he realized it. He had already said the ugly words. Could he go back on his words? At this moment, a servant of the marshal's office hurried over and whispered something in his ear. Tang Yueshan stood up and looked coldly at Marquis Xianping and Gu Chongqing in the torture room. He said disdainfully, "Humph, I'll let you go today. But you hurt Ming, I won't let you go." After that, he threw away the marbles in his hand and walked away with a determined look. Marquis Xianping asked someone to pick up the marbles, wiped them for Chongjing, and returned them to him. Chongjing was a little depressed. He didn't like others touching his marbles. Marquis Xianping straightened his clothes and coaxed, "I'll buy you new ones next time. The round and beautiful ones, okay?" Chongjing's face darkened and his eyes were full of resentment. "You've said that 37 times. Marquis Xianping was embarrassed. "Ahem, did I? I'll buy them this time. I'll definitely buy them." Chongjing lowered his head and carefully wiped his marbles. Marquis Xianping came to the door of the torture room and looked at Gu Chongqing, who had his eyes slightly closed, as if he didn't care about life and death. He said, "You're so young. What's there to be depressed about?" Gu Chongqing slowly opened his eyes and looked at the dark and obscure wall, with traces of damp water. "I'm not depressed." Marquis Xianping stopped here and didn't argue with him. He said, "If you have difficulties, you can go to the emperor and say it." Gu Chongqing calmly said, "I have no difficulties." Not having any difficulties was the greatest difficulty, because it was simply impossible to say it out loud. Marquis Xianping saw through, but didn't expose him. He smiled faintly. "All right, the matter has been taken care of. I should return to the Fu to catch up on my sleep. See you later." Gu Chongqing bowed slightly as a greeting. Marquis Xianping yawned and boarded the carriage. Chongjing sat on the outer seat and drove the carriage. Marquis Xianping knew where the carriage was going even with his eyes closed. He lazily said, "Go to the soft fragrance pavilion." Having been woken up from his sleep, he wouldn't be able to sleep soundly when he returned to the Fu. It wasn't bad to lie down in his arms. Chongjing didn't like that kind of place. There were many women, and they always made strange sounds. However, Miss Yang, of the soft fragrance pavilion, could make a lot of delicious food. On the other side, Tang Yueshan hurried back to the marshal's manor. "Where's the young master? Is he really awake?" he asked the housekeeper waiting at the door as he got off the carriage. The housekeeper hurriedly said, "Yes, he really did wake up. I remembered your orders to immediately inform you when the young master woke up." After what happened last night, Tang Yueshan didn't feel safe leaving Tang Ming alone in the courtyard. He ordered people to move Tang Ming to his own courtyard. At this moment, Tang Ming was lying in his room, sleeping on his bed. The room was filled with a thick medicinal fragrance, suppressing the smell of blood on Tang Ming's body. However, Tang Yueshan could still smell it. He frowned and came to the bed. Dr. Jiang and Dr. Wu were both there. The two of them bowed to him. "Lord Tang." Tang Yueshan waved his hand, gesturing for them to dispense with the formalities. He sat down on the edge of the bed and looked worriedly at Tang Ming. Tang Ming's brows were tightly knitted, his eyes were tightly shut, and his face was pale. He asked, "Didn't you say he was awake?" Dr. Wu said, "He woke up for a while, took 2 sips of medicine, then went back to sleep. In fact, he only took 1 sip and spilled half of it." Tang Ming's face was paler than when Tang Yueshan left in the morning. His breathing was also very weak. Tang Yueshan felt as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. He took a handkerchief from a servant girl and wiped off the cold sweat on Tang Ming's forehead from the pain, even though he was unconscious. Then he asked the 2 doctors, Can he be saved?" The 2 doctors looked at each other and pushed each other with their eyes. In the end, Dr. Jiang coughed softly and said, "We will do our best." "I don't want you to do your best. It's you who can cure him. I only have one." Tang Yueshan paused and clenched his fists. He endured the pain and said, "Nephew, I don't have a son. He is my heir. I won't allow anything to happen to him, whether it's his life or his." Tang Yueshan paused and glanced at a certain part of Tang Ming's body. Can he lift it again? He was not a scholar, so he couldn't say something polite and subtle. Lifted again was the most elegant word he could come up with in front of the doctors. The two doctors didn't know how to answer for a while. After all, they really couldn't say for sure. Tang Ming had lost a sack, so it was reasonable to say that he hadn't completely become a father-in-law. However, he was so badly injured that he couldn't be compared with a normal man. Tang Yueshan was furious that the doctors didn't give him a definite answer. Just as the doctors were about to start trembling in fear, a servant reported that Madame Tang had arrived. Tang Yueshan's anger disappeared and he restrained his murderous aura. "You can leave now." Yes. The doctors were relieved and secretly thought that Madame Tang had come at the right time. Madame Tang entered the room with red and swollen eyes. The bad news made her cry so hard that she almost fainted in the morning. Tang Yueshan's eyes fell on her red eyes. His eyes moved, and he got up to give up the position beside the bed and slightly bowed. Madame Tang saluted him without looking at him. The distance between the two of them was very obvious. "Pour a cup of tea for Madame Tang," Tang Yueshan ordered the servant. The servant said, "Yes." "No need." Madame Tang choked and refused. She touched Tang Ming's face and tears came out again. "My poor child." Tang Yueshan stared at Madame Tang's side face and said solemnly, "Don't worry, sister-in-law. I will cure Ming." Madame Tang covered her mouth and nodded with tears in her eyes. Madame Tang sat for a while. The doctor still had to give Tang Ming medicine. She didn't want to delay her son's treatment, so she got up and left. Perhaps she had been crying for too long. The moment she stood up, she felt dizzy. She shook her head and staggered a few steps. Tang Yueshan's expression changed, and he went forward to support her. His eyes were full of nervousness. "Sister-in-law." Madame Tang was supported, and the dizziness quickly passed. She looked at the hand holding her arm, and her expression changed. She quickly pulled her arm away. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/112483067. HTML Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bqg mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 282. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. Tang Yueshan seemed to realize that he had lost his composure and took a step back. "Take care, sister-in-law. If he wakes up tomorrow, I'll have someone inform you." "Thank you." Madame Tang nodded slightly and walked out of the room with the help of a servant girl. After that, the medical officer continued to treat Tang Ming, and Tang Yueshan returned to the barracks to interrogate Gu Chongqing. Marquis Xian Ping had people in the barracks. He couldn't have lost the bet in the morning and broken his promise in the afternoon. He didn't torture Gu Chongqing, but used the worst interrogation environment. Gu Chongqing was brought to a dark room that was specially used to interrogate soldiers who had committed serious crimes. Cold torture instruments hung on the walls. Perhaps it had been baptized by too much blood, but even though they had been wiped clean, it was difficult to hide the nauseating smell of blood. "Do you admit to your crime?" "I broke Tang Ming's arm. I admit to it." "The assassination in the middle of the night?" No. No matter how Tang Yueshan interrogated him, Gu Chongqing always said the same thing. He had clearly been severely injured by the old marquis, but his mind was still clear. This made Tang Yueshan very angry. Gu Chongqing admitting to breaking Tang Ming's arm was enough to convict Gu Chongqing. But this was not what Tang Yueshan wanted. Tang Ming was half a cripple. No matter whether the assassin that night was Gu Chongqing or not, everything had started because of Gu Chongqing. If Gu Chongqing hadn't injured Tang Ming, how could Tang Ming not even be able to defeat an assassin? How could he have fallen into such a vicious trap? Gu Chongqing would have to pay the price for this, a huge price. Clearwater Alley. After being in a coma for 3 days, Gu Yan finally woke up. Yao Shi was watching over him. She sat on a chair beside the bed and fell asleep with her head leaning against the bedpost. She was pregnant, so it was easy for her to get sleepy. She had been staying by Gu Yan's side for the past few days, so she fell asleep without paying attention. Gu Jiao had just changed Gu Yan's for drip. She turned her head and saw him open his eyes. She said softly, "You're awake? How do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Gu Yan shook his head. He didn't feel uncomfortable, but his body was a little weak. He turned his head to look at the house and asked, "Where is this?" "Son-in-law this way," Gu Jiao said. When she had just brought Gu Yan back, Gu Yan's condition was a little too horrible to look at. For the sake of not provoking Yao Shi, she had him stay here. After Yao Shi found out, she did not move him. With regards to Yao Shi, Gu Jiao naturally could not tell her the entire truth. She only knew that Gu Yan had gone to buy something and fainted because he lost his way. Gu Yan had heart problems. This kind of situation had happened before, so Yao Shi did not suspect anything. She only felt very sorry for Gu Yan and was very worried about Gu Yan. Gu Yan turned his head and saw Yao Shi sleeping soundly. He opened his mouth and wanted to ask something, but he heard Gu Jiao say, "I didn't say anything." It was a simple 3 words that came out of nowhere, but Gu Yan understood. Perhaps this was the tacit understanding between the twins. Gu Yan relaxed and asked, "How long have I been asleep?" Gu Jiao touched his forehead and said, 3 days. Then, Gu Yan's eyes flashed with something, but he hesitated. Gu Jiao slowed down the drip. "I'll go make you something to eat. How about millet congee and egg drop soup?" "Both are good." Gu Yan lowered his eyes and said. Gu Jiao nodded and turned to leave. When she reached the door, she stopped and turned her face slightly. She looked to the side and said, "That bastard has already been taken care of. Don't be afraid. He won't hurt you again. You can be at ease and boldly walk into the sunlight." Gu Yan gave a muffled grunt of acknowledgement. Gu Jiao was not in a rush to immediately have her younger brother become lively again. Some wounds needed time to heal. What Gu Jiao did not know was that the first thing that Gu Yan cared about after waking up was not Tang Ming's disgusting actions. He would care about those things, and it would take a long time for him to erase them from his heart. But now was not the time. Right now, his mind was filled with a name that he had heard from Tang Ming before he had fainted, Gu Chongqing. As the young master of the Marquis Fu, he was naturally not unfamiliar with this name. He was actually Gu Chongqing. He thought of those unbearable memories from his childhood. Because of his weak body, he only learned to walk when he was 2 years old. He only learned to run when he was 3 years old. One day, he took advantage of his afternoon nap to quietly climb out of bed and go to the Marquis Fu's little garden. At that time, there was a boy in black clothes practicing his sword in the garden. The boy was not even 10 years old, but he was taller than a 10-year-old child. He waved a long sword that did not match his body shape. He was full of righteousness and had a valiant and formidable bearing. That was his older brother. He knew. When the boy put away his sword, he ran over. "Older brother, I'm Gu Yan. You can call me Yan, or you can call me Yan. N. Mother called me Bao Bao. If you like, you can call me that too." He saw that he was sweating profusely and even pulled off the small pouch around his neck and handed it to him. "Here." The other party did not take it. He looked at him with a cold gaze. "I'm not your older brother, and you're not my younger brother." He did not understand that gaze at that time. He only felt a little hurt. But after he grew up and carefully thought about it, it was not a wound. It was the pain of a knife cutting through his tender little heart. You are my older brother. You are my father's son, and I am also my father's son. But you are not my mother's son. We can never be brothers. The 3-year-old him was abandoned in the cold wind like that. It was probably really painful, so much so that he could still remember it. But did he give up? He did not. He did not understand why his father was his older brother's father, but his mother was not his older brother's mother. He went to ask his father. His father said, "Of course he is your older brother, and you are also his younger brother." Oh, he knew it. He was very happy. But when he turned his head, he saw his father rushing to his older brother's courtyard. He pulled out his older brother, who was practicing calligraphy, and gave him a good beating. Who allowed you to bully your younger brother? If you dare to talk nonsense again, I'll break your legs. No, don't break his older brother's legs. He hurriedly ran over and hugged his father's thigh, telling him not to hit him. Don't hit older brother. Don't hit, don't hit. His father carried him away. He looked at his older brother, who was kneeling on the ground with a face full of anger and humiliation. He came to find him. He roared at him and said, "Don't come find me again. I hate you when I see you. I hate you. I wish there was no such thing as you in this family." He actually wanted to tell him, "Older brother, second brother, and third brother hit me. They bruised my arm. It hurts so much." But at that moment, he felt that his heart hurt more than his arm. He thought that he was different from his 2 brothers. He had seen him touch the little rabbit on the ground, and he had also seen him save the little bird on the tree. He was such a kind person. He even liked little birds. He was so cute, he would definitely like him too. But he did not like him. He hated him. He wished that he had never existed. He held his own heart and sincerely worshipped it to him. In return, he threw it away like it was a pair of worn-out shoes. But even so, when he was locked up in the dark room by his third brother, his heart still longed for him. He hoped that just once he could come and protect him. He was his most respected older brother. Later, he left. He stepped on the carriage to the mountain villa. From time to time, he would look back. At that time, he thought that if his older brother could come out and see him, he would not feel wronged. He would not leave. He was not afraid of being bullied by his third and second brother. But he did not come. He finally fell into his mother's arms and burst into tears. He had been in the villa for 10 years, but he did not wait for him to come visit even once. He finally forced himself to accept reality bit by bit. He was not his younger brother, and he was not his older brother. They had the same father, but they would never have any relationship. The memories in his mind surged. Guyen closed his eyes. In the dead of night, the moon was bright and the stars were few. The entire army camp fell into silence. Gu Chongqing sat on the straw mat, not feeling sleepy. Suddenly, there was movement outside the door, followed by the sound of 2 bodies falling to the ground. Gu Chongqing's eyes turned cold, and a vigilant light flashed through his eyes. In the next second, the door to the torture room was opened. More than 10 cold hidden weapons shot towards his head and face. This was the rhythm of shooting him into a sieve. Gu Chongqing suddenly rolled on the ground and grabbed the straw mat by the wall. He waved his arm towards the hidden weapons. Using the soft to conquer the hard, he took down the hidden weapons. Then, the straw mat scattered, and the hidden weapons shot back at the other party. The other party seemed to have been prepared. He did not rush into the torture room. The moment the hidden weapons shot back, he quickly hid behind the wall. The hidden weapons were nailed to the ground outside the torture room. Only then did the other party enter the room with a sword to assassinate Gu Chongqing. Gu Chongqing's hands and feet were shackled with iron chains. He raised his hands and used the iron chains between the shackles to seize the other party's sword. Holding the sword in his hand, he fiercely stabbed the other party's heart. It was true that he was injured, but in terms of skill, he was still much stronger than the other party. The masked man in black was almost stabbed by Gu Chongqing. He hurriedly retreated from a torture room. The shackles on Gu Chongqing's feet were tied to the iron rings on the wall. He could not get out. The man in black stood outside the danger zone. He crossed his arms and laughed without restraint. I didn't expect you to be so good at fighting even when injured. You are indeed the cold-faced Yama, Commandant Gu. Who are you? Gu Changqing asked coldly. The man in black smiled slightly. I'm the one who came to kill you. Someone paid for your life. But it seems that I underestimated your strength. I won't be able to kill you tonight. I can only settle for the next best thing, which is to kill your brother. Gu Changqing frowned. The man in black said slowly, the patron said that he had to take one of your brother's lives. Otherwise, it would be difficult to vent the hatred in his heart. Hatred in his heart? Gu Chengfeng and Gu Chenglin did not have any bad blood with anyone. Could it be? Gu Changqing's heart sank. He wanted to ask more, but the other party had already used Qinggong and disappeared into the boundless night. Gu Changqing thought back to the other party's mask. The mask was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. The hidden weapons on the ground also gave off an inexplicable sense of familiarity. The other party could have really gone to kill Gu Yan, or it could have been fake. Gu Changqing's eyes darkened. He did not hesitate for too long. He raised the long sword in his hand and cut off the iron chains on his hands and feet. He walked out of the torture room. At this moment, a soldier who had come to relieve the guard arrived outside the torture room. He saw Gu Changqing holding a sword and wearing shackles that had been broken. He then looked at the two corpses on the ground. The corpses' blood flowed all over the ground. Gu Changqing's sword was dripping with blood. His expression changed. Commandant Gu. Gu Changqing frowned, but did not explain. He threw away his sword, thought for a moment, and knocked the other party out with a palm strike. Actually, there was no need. The other party was too shocked and completely forgot to stop him. However, if he did not knock the other party out, the other party would be guilty of dereliction of duty. Gu Changqing went to the stable to get his horse and rushed to Chang on Main Street. Along the way, he paid attention to whether or not he was being followed. After confirming that there was no one, he turned into Jade Water Alley. He went straight to the old chancellor's place. He rushed into Gu Yan's room. Gu Yan was soaking his feet in the medicinal concoction that Gu Jiao had boiled. Yao Shi was accompanying him at the side. The two of them were stunned when they saw Gu Changqing enter the room, travel-worn. Gu Changqing probably did not know how many days he had been locked up in the torture room and how terrible his appearance was. His clothes were still stained with blood. The corner of his mouth had been accidentally whipped and was still bruised. He had not shaved for a few days, so there was a faint bruise around his lips. However, his eyes were so bright in the dark night that it was threatening. Gu Jiao had told Yao Shi and the family that Gu Yan had lost his way and fainted. Therefore, Yao Shi did not know that her son had met Tang Ming and had already found out from Tang Ming that he was Gu Changqing. Yao Shi still thought that they were getting along like before. Yao Shi stood up and said, "You're here to see Enna, right?" Actually, she wanted to ask what was wrong with Gu Changqing, but it was not good to ask. "I'm going to see if the medicine is ready," Yao Shi said and went out. When Gu Changqing saw Gu Yan's current appearance, how could he not understand? However, he did not regret it. On the contrary, he let out a sigh of relief. He was very glad that the other party was scheming against him and did not really want to harm Gu Yan. "Are you feeling better?" Gu Yan lowered his eyes and did not speak. After experiencing such a thing, anyone would be in low spirits. His reaction was not strange in Gu Changqing's eyes. Gu Changqing thought of that day when Tang Ming called his name. At that time, Gu Yan seemed to have fainted. He should not have heard it, right? Gu Changqing gathered his courage and walked to the bedside. As usual, he reached out to touch his forehead. He was worried that the shackles would be exposed, so he covered them with his sleeve. However, just as he was about to touch Gu Yan tilted his head. It was unknown if it was intentional or not. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964226/112479535. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com that you're tuning in to the Echo Reads YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.